A blessed good morning, honorable members, and those under the sound of my voice. What a joy it is to be alive today, the first day of the second half of 2024. We give God praise. In our Moments of Impact devotional segment, I'll be speaking today from the topic, Lead with Humility. One of the greatest assets or character traits any leader can possess is humility. Humility, in its simplest definition, is a modest opinion of oneself. It's the feeling or attitude that you have no special importance that makes you better than others. It's important for leaders to display humility at all times because it strengthens the quality of their leadership. The reality is, no one wants to follow a leader who believes they are better than others. No one wants to follow a leader who is a narcissist or obnoxious, or one who believes they know it all. Let me hasten to remind all of us leaders that God made all humans equal. We were all made in the image and the likeness of God. God didn't give any human any special preference over the other. And so as leaders, we must remember that our status in society doesn't give us a license to act as if we are better than others. It's amazing how certain people, when they rise to a level of prominence in society and become people of influence and power, they lose all sense of humility. All of a sudden, they have an air about themselves. They don't speak to the common man or the common woman anymore. Or if they do speak, they speak in a degrading or a disparaging manner. Parliamentarians, I exhort you today to not to fall into this category, because just how God exalted you to serve in this honorable house, he can bring you down. No one is ever too high for God to bring them low. There was a king in the Bible by the name of Nebuchadnezzar who was stripped of his power because he became filled with pride. The scripture actually says he was driven from human society and lived in the fields with the wild animals and ate grass like a cow. James 4:6 reminds us, but he giveth more grace. Wherefore he said, God resisted the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. And so in conclusion, I admonish each of you under the sound of my voice, including myself, to lead with humility by acknowledging that God is the one who has placed you in the position of prominence and power, by treating others with respect, by not looking down on anyone, by listening to others, and by empathizing with others. I leave you with this final thought today from a quote by C.S. Lewis, and it says, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Selah. Think and act on these things. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for our space here today. We realize that there are so many who were here up to this morning, but now they have transitioned into eternity. And so, Father, we are grateful that you spared our lives to see the beginning of a brand new month. And so today, we lift up our nation to you and ask Almighty God for your divine intervention to help us overcome the social, spiritual, psychological, relational, and economic challenges so many of our people are facing. Father, you admonish us in your word to come boldly before the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help us in the time of need. And so, Father, we are doing just that today. We need your strength and your power to be demonstrated on our behalf. Our people need healing. Our people need deliverance. Our people need a touch from you. And so today, we acknowledge that all power belongs to you and that nothing is impossible for you to do. And so today, we repose our trust in you. While some trust in horses and chariots, we will trust in the name of the Lord. And so we pray, Lord, for our parliamentarians today, as you've commanded us to pray for them that are in authority. We ask, Almighty God, that you would lead and guide and strengthen each of them today. And, oh God, undergird them with your divine wisdom. We pray, Lord, that you would clothe each of them with humility as they serve this great nation. Oh Lord, We ask for your divine peace and blessings upon today's proceedings. And may you continue to reign on the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let us pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, God in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Chester Cooper, Brad Mitchell, Gladys Hanamani, Alfred Says, Dr. Michael Davo, Clay Sweeting, Keith Bell, Wayne Monroe, Vaughn Miller, Jobek Colby Davis, Ginger Moxie, Mario Bole, Jomo Campbell, Basil McIntosh, Mazeroda, Pia Glover Roll, Lisa Raming, Zane Lightburn, Dr. Hubert Minnis, Jamal Strawn, John Pinder, Bacchus Roll, Leon Lundy, Kirk Cornish, Wade Watson, Leonardo Lightburn, Leslie Miller Bryce, Leroy Major, Sylvanus Petty, Mikkel Barnaby, Michael Pintard, James Gracie Thompson, Hiram Lewis, Shannon Cartwright, Adrian Gibson, Adrian White, Kingsley Smith.
Good morning, honorable members. Good morning. We will now go down the order of business as we conduct the people's business. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents, my ministers. Thank you, honorable member. Statement and communication by ministers. None. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motion for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Thank you, honorable member. Second reading in committee of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Tall Pines.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And I also like to thank Apostle Williams for those encouraging words and pray that I remain humble as I represent the residents of Tall Pines. Madam Speaker, this morning I rise to give God thanks for health and strength, and for this wonderful opportunity to move the Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill 2024. On passing, it would help my ministry in the fight against chronic non-communicable diseases, which is the main cause of morbidity and premature death in our people. Madam Speaker, last Saturday night, I attended another successful Parkinson's Disease Foundation ball held at the beautiful Bahamas Resort, and had the opportunity to speak briefly about the use of stem cells and exosomes to treat serious degenerative neurological diseases like Parkinson's. I am pleased to say that this bill will help to bring these life-improving treatments in our country and pave the way for regenerative medicine research throughout the Commonwealth. Madam Speaker, this bill was foreshadowed in our administration's last speech from the throne, delivered by Her Excellency Cynthia Mother Pratt, Governor General of our great Commonwealth. And on the enactment of this bill, Her Excellency will lay a solid foundation for cutting edge for regenerative therapies, cancer gene research, and stem cell therapies, and ultimately capitalize on medical tourism benefits of the anti-aging industry in the Bahamas. The regulatory framework for this new bill will establish clinical protocols and policies in country to ensure that therapeutic applications of evidence-based research will be conducted safely, ethically, and with serious scientific vigor. Madam Speaker, this strategic and forward-thinking piece of legislation will allow scientists, clinicians, to conduct quality research right here in our country and will lead to medical breakthroughs, treatment in areas of regenerative medicine, and local holistic plant and marine-based therapies. Yes, we at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we believe the time has come to seriously investigate local bush remedies with a plan to patent these local, well-established protocols into products that we can export internationally. Madam Speaker, in short, this bill will help us to develop life-enhancing treatments that can prolong lives of our people and provide patients with a better quality of life as they age gracefully. The hope is to reduce debilitating illnesses brought on by aging, such as arthritis, stroke, cardiovascular disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, that rob families and their loved ones from quality living and as they age gracefully. I am pleased this morning to outline some of the nuts and bolts of this bill and ask for support from parliamentary colleagues on both sides of the political divide. But, Madam Speaker, before getting into the details of this bill, with your leave, I must take this opportunity to thank the great people of Tall Pines for affording me this wonderful opportunity to serve. During the budget debate, I shared an update on the constituency progress and accomplishments over the last 29 months. And yes, we outlined our plans for this year. I spoke about the new Tall Pines Urban Renewal Center earmarked for this year and the extensive road work, drain cleaning, and park restoration that is scheduled to begin next month. Thanks to the Minister of Works, on Friday, we paved Appleway as promised, and the work will continue as we move in the weeks and months ahead. Madam Speaker, early next month, my team and I will continue our aggressive door-to-door visits in the constituency in order to meet residents at their homes, listen to their concerns, update them about our plans for the balance of this year, particularly our wellness and mental health programs that was launched last year. I assure you, we will intensify our efforts over the next few months at our parks and open spaces in the Tall Pines constituency to improve physical health, and many residents help them who are suffering from chronic medical conditions. Finally, the monthly meeting schedule every Thursday is at 7 p.m. at Garvin Times Primary School, and I invite all residents of Tall Pines and those in the Southern Corridor to visit us tomorrow at 7 o'clock at the Garvin Times Primary as we begin to articulate the way forward for the Southern Corridor and what is happening in healthcare throughout the country. Madam Speaker, this Longevity and Regenerative Therapy Bill 2024 before us this morning seeks to repeal and replace the Stem Cell Research Therapy Act 2013, which has served its purpose well. In 2013, the Ethics Committee was charged with monitoring the science and ensuring that therapies conducted in the Bahamas at that time met the high ethical and safety profile. Those in the stem cell industry who were privileged to practice in the Bahamas who were found in violation of ethics and safety protocols were ordered to discontinue their work in country until they can provide the necessary protocols that will satisfy both national as well as international standards. Madam Speaker, after reviewing the current act and having discussions with members of the Ethics Committee, research scientists, and clinicians, my ministry realized that after more than a decade, the current act needed to go beyond stem cell therapies and accommodate the evolving progressive advancement in longevity and regenerative medicine therapies. It was clear that the old act could not simply be amended, but needed to be repealed and replaced place in order to meet the regulatory framework that is moving rapidly in the industry. Madam Speaker, the purpose of the 2013 Stem Cell Act was to create the legal framework at that time to ensure that stem cell research and therapies were conducted safely, ethically in country with regard to emerging scientific developments. The old bill allowed us to foster innovation of stem cell research and therapy with the goal of encouraging the advancement of medical cures in regenerative medicine and reap the medical tourism benefits that come with this type of life-saving medical therapy. Madam Speaker, in 2013, the Stem Cell Act established the National Stem Cell Ethics Committee, the competent legal authority to grant approval of all stem cell research and therapy taking place in the Bahamas. The National Stem Cell Ethics Committee convened its first meeting at the Public Hospitals Authority Conference Room on Monday, January the 14th, 2014, and the rest is history. Madam Speaker, the committee has operated continuously from 2014 and has done a tremendous job that has led them to recognition both locally and internationally. Over the past decade, the National Stem Cell Ethics Committee has been in effect, and over 1,000 plus patients have been treated in the Bahamas with no serious adverse effects. Many have been compassionate cases where patients have received life-saving health benefits from advanced regenerative therapies manufactured by highly reputable biotech companies in the United States, the UK, Europe, and the current good manufacturing practice system has been implemented in the Bahamas by all authorized laboratories. Under these high standards, the National Stem Cell Ethics Committee also required that cell therapies manufactured internationally are transported with electronic trackers and to ensure proper temperature controls through the transmission process, and these therapies were retested to ensure sterility, viability, potency once they arrive in country, and then again before being administered to patients. Madam Speaker, since the implementation of the 2013 Stem Cell Act, the field of regenerative medicine have evolved significantly and simply outgrown the legal framework of the current act to regulate this fast-growing industry, thus the need to repeal the act. The act itself is too primitive to address the way how the industry has grown over the last decade. Madam Speaker, scientists increasingly recognize regenerative capacity of stem cells, and the industry continue to ensure therapies become available that can improve lives, cure chronic debilitating medical conditions, and improve longevity. Madam Speaker, the most recent scientific research is also demonstrating that the same cellular mechanism that causes aging also cause age-related diseases like cardiovascular disease, brought on by chronic non-communicable diseases like hypertension, heart disease, atherosclerosis, type 2 diabetes, cancer, osteoarthritis, kidney disease, and various other infectious diseases that is brought on because of the decline of our immune system that is tied in with aging. Additionally, in recent years, the focus on healthy longevity and advanced longevity therapies, there has been the union of emerging fields of longevity and regenerative medicine known as healthy longevity, and the industry has grown by leaps and bounds. The number of advanced longevity and regenerative therapies being developed across the world to treat age-related diseases has increased exponentially in recent years. Just last year, in December 2023, the FDA approved the first 2 gene therapies for sickle cell anemia. Madam Speaker, the field of longevity and regenerative medicine is becoming one of the most important medical industries of our time. The global wellness industry is currently estimated at $400 billion per year and is projected predicted to increase to the trillions of dollars in 2025. Working closely with the Honorable Member for Exuma and the Minister of Tourism, we intend to capitalize on this fast-growing industry and tap into these new highly lucrative tourism markets where Bahamians can benefit from these life-changing therapies, and our local medical fraternity can benefit financially, as well as the ability for transference of knowledge. Madam Speaker, while the number of patients treated with stem cell therapies in the Bahamas over the last decade is modest, the focus of the National Stem Cell Ethics Committee has been on establishing high-quality standards and operation procedures for all stem cell therapies administered in the Bahamas, thereby creating a strong foundation that we have now to scale up our contact. To this end, the goal of the Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill 2024 being debated this morning is to build on the successes of the 2013 Stem Cell Act, which was the visionary child of the former Prime Minister, the Honorable Perry Gladstone Christie, while at the same time leveraging the strong tourism brand of our country to ensure that Bahamian maintains its place as a global leader in the field of regenerative medicine, as a leading destination that provides accelerated global access to cutting-edge regenerative therapies for patients with unmet medical needs. Madam Speaker, the Longevity and Regenerative Bill 2024 establishes the Longevity and Regenerative Therapy Board, which is very important for us to be able to capitalize on the financial benefits of the industry. This board will encourage the advancement of medical tourism in the field of regeneration, longevity, stem cell therapies, gene therapies, cancer therapies, immunological therapies, and encourage transitional medicine globally. We want to be on the global stage when it comes to longevity and regenerative medicine, simply because we have 10 years of experience in the industry and we are rubbing shoulders with the big players. The 7-member board will also develop incentives to attract top-tier biotech companies to operate in the Bahamas, thereby bringing new high-paying jobs and opportunities for our people and strengthening our local economy by way of medical tourism. Critically, the board will ensure that the stem cell therapies, gene therapies, and other promising regenerative therapies are accessible in the Bahamas and properly monitored and become available to Bahamians. This is important because our SEP survey clearly indicated that our health situation is not very good in the country. These new regenerative as well as cell therapies are important for Bahamians to access locally. Once this bill is passed, it will also establish the Longevity and Regenerative Therapy Ethics Review Committee, separate from the board, to ensure that these cutting-edge therapies are properly vetted so that longevity and regenerative research and administration of therapies are safe, ethically sound, and implemented in country with the regard for the most sophisticated scientific development worldwide. Madam Speaker, it's important to note that the process of developing this new legislation has been rigorous. This is not something that we've thrown together. In developing this bill, my ministry has obtained feedback and input from leading national as well as international experts in life science, law, education, and business from some of the most reputable institutions on the planet. Additionally, the Longevity and Regenerative Therapy Bill 2024 was shared extensively at our most recent Health Inc. Future Health Innovation Summit held on the 28th of April to the 30th at the Atlantis Resort Paradise Island, and it was led by our chair, Desiree Cox. The conference brought together more than 40 international scientists, medical doctors, investors, regulatory experts, and policymakers in this field of longevity medicine who shared the latest global advancements, the dialogue surrounding the therapies, and the positioning of the Bahamas as one of the leaders. I want to say this, one of the leaders in the arena. The international scientific community, Madam Speaker, is eagerly waiting for the passing and enactment of this progressive piece of legislation. And once again, we're looking for bilateral support from all members in this chamber. Madam Speaker, I've been in this honorable place long enough to know that all legislative acts are as good as the implementation process. And the funding is paramount in order for us to do so. This is why, during the budget presentation, I made reference to Head 60, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, line item 228114, where the sum of $250,000 was allocated to bring this bill into force ASAP. Establish the critical framework for the application of many of these new technologies and therapies in country, inclusive of stem cell therapies, gene therapies for genetic diseases, cancer, stem cell therapies, and yes, the much talked about anti-aging management protocols that's rocking the world. Do you know that the scientific community have found ways to stop aging? We have the capability now to basically, by looking at a cellular structure, to look at the mitochondrial level where aging can actually be stopped. And this is sound research. It almost sounds like science fiction, but anti-aging is a serious drive now in the academic community. Madam Speaker, I would like to draw your attention to Clause 17, Section 1 of the bill, subsection A to E. A, no person or entity shall genetically modify the human embryo with the intent of that embryo being a living human being. B, no person or entity in the Bahamas shall test gene therapies on patients without their consent. C, no person or entity shall purposely modify the germline of an adult human being. And the germline is basically the sex cells from the eggs or the sperm. You cannot modify them in order to create something that you're thinking about. And D, no person or entity shall transplant an edited human embryo into a non-human life form. E, no person or entity shall use replicated viruses to deliver therapies except if specifically approved by specific treatments of the Ethics Committee. Also, Clause 17, Section 2, no person shall abort or attempt to abort a fetus for the purpose of conducting research in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. You see, we are looking at the ethical aspects of gene therapy, cellular therapies, regenerative medicine to ensure that the Bahamas is an ethical jurisdiction. Over a decade, more than 1,000 treatments have been conducted safely and ethically in our country under the current stem cell monitoring mechanism, and this new bill aims to tighten the current regulatory framework to keep those rotten apples out of our jurisdiction. Madam Speaker, Clause 19 and 20 speaks about licensing and inspecting these facilities, whereas Clause 21 and 22 speaks about safety and the violation of the Act, whereas Clause 23 speaks to a person or entity who failed to comply with the Act, its regulatory commitments, and they commit an offense that is liable to a minimum of $25,000 or 2 years imprisonment or both. Now, I made it very clear, minimum of $25,000 or 2 years in prison or both. Finally, Clause 26 of the bill aimed to repeal the current Stem Cell Research and Therapies Act 2013, taking into consideration the legal obligations that we currently have with that act. Madam Speaker, a lot of hard work went into the drafting of this piece of legislation, and while on my feet, I would like to thank our hard-working AG, the Honorable Ryan Pinder, for his hard work to push this bill through, his team at the Attorney General's Office and the Law Reform Commission for this fine piece of work. This is a fine piece of work that will continue to put us on the world stage. Madam Speaker, while in this chamber and in the other place, I've never seen a perfect piece of legislation. But we on this side are confident that this piece of legislation is progressive, and it will keep the Bahamas on the world stage along with countries like Japan. Over the last decade, we have created and maintained a solid reputation in the field of stem cell therapies and regenerative medicine, and we intend to keep it that way. This new bill will make way for further growth and development in longevity and regenerative therapies in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for years to come. But this time, with the implementation of the board, we intend to reap much of the financial benefit from this industry by the board by establishing a well-fixed location, fully staffed, with the technology necessary to monitor the industry, and to develop the close MOU with the Ministry of Tourism that would help us to achieve our goals and objectives. Madam Speaker, the bill itself is not a big bill, but it's a powerful bill. This is the continuation of the stem cell therapy bill established in 2013, and this bill is now paving the way for further advancement of the industry and to reap much of the beneficial rewards, both for local residents, for the medical fraternity, and for our economy. We believe that this piece of legislation opens the door for greater medical tourism in our country, and I'm excited to lay this bill and to move this bill for the first time here in this chamber. Thank you, Madam President. We look forward for bilateral support, Madam Speaker, and we look forward for bilateral support as we debate this exciting piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Gates.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This morning I rise as usual, giving glory and honor to Almighty God, our Lord and Savior, for His grace and His mercy and His favor towards us, to be here and to serve the great people of our nation in this place, of which I'm sure we are all grateful. I rise today, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the industrious people of the Golden Gates constituency and in support of and to second this longevity and regenerative therapies bill as an important step forward for our nation in terms of health. As Tall Pines noted, and this bill is for the purpose of supporting quality living and for women, graceful aging in particular. We are very excited about that part, Tall Pines. So I must disclose that for health purposes, I too am personally looking forward to the implementation of this bill. I heard a lot of great things in there about quality health and longevity, and I second also Tall Pines' sentiments to our Attorney General, the Honorable Ryan Pinder, and his team at the Law Reform Commission and the Attorney General's Office for their consistent work and excellent research and drafting of these bills. Before, Madam Speaker, I get into my contribution, though, I'd like to send prayers of support to our regional sisters and brothers as they brace for Beryl. Coming out of my previous life, I have lots of friends and family and colleagues in business and now in government across the region. And even my daughter, Lauren, she resides in Jamaica. So as I begin today, I would like to have us all send prayers of support. Our thoughts and prayers are with our regional brothers and sisters across the Windward Isles, as we call them, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, St. Lucia in particular, Trinidad, Cayman Islands, Barbados, and Jamaica. Our prayers are with them as we know too well what it is to prepare for a devastating storm as what we experienced here in the Bahamas as well. Madam Speaker, I would like to give condolences to the families of Jennifer Newton, Tyrell Johnson, and Darren Moore, who have all recently passed away and are constituents of the Golden Gates community. May their souls, of course, rest in God's perfect peace and rise in glory. And we extend condolences and comfort to their families. I'd like to give greetings, while I may, to Mr. Cecil White, to our Golden Gates constituency staff, and all of the residents in Golden Gates, indeed, who are always tuned in. Madam Speaker, as millions of people visit our shores to have their own personal experience of our paradise, under the leadership of our Prime Minister and our Deputy Prime Minister, we're constantly exploring new opportunities within the global tourism market. And our efforts have paid off in sports tourism, as we have hosted numerous regional and international events since taking office, and we're making the necessary investments in infrastructure to continue to host these major events. We've seen progress with ecotourism, with several private ecotourism projects that are preparing to launch their investments. And now today, Madam Speaker, with the passage of this Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill 2024, we will likewise lay the foundation for future success in medical tourism. Madam Speaker, medical tourism is a booming industry, and the Bahamas is already a booming market, and we're familiar with some levels of medical tourism. Many Bahamians travel abroad themselves for various health and medical services, but it's now time to ensure that as a nation, we get a bigger share of the medical tourism pie. So this Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill establishes a legal framework that will place us at the forefront when it comes to establishing these world-leading medical treatments within our own borders. Our government's legislative agenda is moving ahead efficiently, and we're making major progress across a wide range of areas. Just last week, we brought changes to the Securities Commission and the DARE Act, and this week we have a focus on healthcare with a link to medical tourism. From the perspective of my portfolio, though, Madam Speaker, we will also be bringing a full slate of labor reforms to this House. The development cycle of new laws and policies to improve upon our existing labor and public service laws are well underway. We have teams of experts at Public Service and the Department of Labor hard at work assessing, benchmarking, and making recommendations for reforms. Now that their work is taking form, Madam Speaker, the next step for us will be to take our preliminary work and bring it to our stakeholders, and that is where we are in the process. So this month, we will, in partnership with the Ministry of Finance, host a week-long symposium for all major stakeholders. We will be inviting trade unions, the National Tripartite Council, the Department of Labor, employer confederations, the Ministry of Finance, the Attorney General's Office, state-owned operations, and representatives from relevant stakeholders to meet, dialogue, address key issues, and produce a white paper on legislative and policy reforms for labor over the course of that week. As we make major progress on our transformative agenda, we are ensuring that the laws are in place to keep labor and the public service moving forward, and by extension, our nation. Key deliverables coming out of this symposium will include recommendations on changes to the Employment Act, the Industrial Relations Act, general orders, public service regulations, and other antiquated laws and regulations. It is a major and much-needed modernization exercise that will positively impact every person in this nation in one way or another. Madam Speaker, the Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill lays the foundation for the Bahamas to become a world-leading jurisdiction for medical and wellness tourism. This bill makes room for our nation to be home to a robust regenerative and longevity medicine industry for people who desire regenerative, life-preserving, and life-extending treatments that represent the future for medical therapy. These therapies help the body to heal itself, reverse underlying causes of diseases, and ultimately has the potential to help those who receive the treatments live longer, healthier lives. This industry is growing in popularity, and the market for these services is estimated to be in the tens of billions. And this represents for us a major potential windfall. To see the changes in this bill as an opportunity for the Bahamas to get in on an emergent, rapidly growing field. As local providers of these services spring up, our economy will grow, and we will create jobs that Bahamians can be trained for and occupy. Madam Speaker, this progressive bill makes room for a policy on stem cell and gene therapy, which will inform the work of the National Longevity and Regenerative Therapy Board and Ethics Committee, which is established through this bill. The goal is to empower the board to uphold best practices and develop and implement new policies. Standards are established for applications, approvals, registration, licensing, and monitoring of activities and standards. This bill also establishes standards for medical ethics, and we heard the member for Tall Pines emphasize how important this aspect is, prohibiting certain therapies and research where there are ethical and moral concerns. For example, altering living human embryos and performing therapies on people without their consent are specifically prohibited. Under this bill, all service providers must be fully licensed and operating according to best practices. Where there is a determination made that there are violations of health and safety standards, the minister will have the power to suspend operations of these facilities to protect the public. This bill also establishes the liability and accountability for failing to comply with the provisions of this act, which will now be classified as an offense. This ensures that anyone operating outside of the bounds of this law will be held accountable. So for individuals, this would be a fine of up to $25,000, a prison sentence of up to 2 years, or both. Where a corporation is involved, the directors, managers, and leadership team will likewise be held accountable. Madam Speaker, it is of the utmost importance when embracing medical innovation that we ensure everything is being conducted according to the highest health, safety, and ethical standards. The Bahamas is not the market for those looking for back alley treatments. We are establishing ourselves as a high standard, high-value jurisdiction for legitimate life-enhancing and regenerating medical treatments for anyone who prioritizes quality and safety. In the long run, I believe we will truly establish ourselves as a regional and world leader that will attract and cultivate top talent and investors seeking a well-developed legal framework. And this, in turn, will bring medical visitors to our shores. But most importantly, anything that lends to access to improved health and well-being of our citizens is of paramount importance to our administration. Today, we concretize that priority through this bill. Madam Speaker, as I close, I'd like to provide a brief update on all the great things going on in the Golden Gates constituency this summer. Our annual Golden Gate Summer Scoops ice cream giveaway starts today, July 1st. And as usual, we'll be giving away free ice cream treats to our Golden Gates children every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the months of July and August to keep them cool and refreshed and happy. Our Golden Gates Cultural Enrichment and Empowerment Summer Camp will begin on July 15th for children between 6 to 11 years old, and on July 22nd for children between 12 to 17 years old. And just like last year and the year before, activities will include a variety of cultural, creative, and entrepreneurial lessons. There will be art, soap making, junkanoo craft, coconut jewelry making, candle making, and even Zumba sessions by Caribbean Sweat Fitness to keep everyone active. At the end of July, we will host our annual report card reward program. Any child in Golden Gates who achieves a 2.5 GPA or above will get a free bike, scooter, or hoverboard. Our Golden Gates feeding program is still going strong every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, We continue to offer job assistance, scholarship assistance, as well as assistance for anyone who wants to prepare their home for hurricane season. I invite constituents to contact the constituency office if they're interested in receiving any form of assistance. Madam Speaker, it is July 1st, the first day of the month, the first day of the 2024-25 budget cycle, and it is fitting that we are starting this new cycle off, continuing to work diligently on behalf of the Bahamian people to move our agenda forward. Just like we did on day one of this term, we continue to show up every day determined to do the hard work necessary for progress. Today, Madam Speaker, I second the Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill 2024 as we take yet another important and progressive step forward. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to provide for the approval and regulation of longevity and regenerative therapies and related matters. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for St. Anne's.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the great constituents of the St. Anne's constituency and to add my contribution to this lively debate on longevity and regenerative therapies bill. Madam Speaker, we can recall when Peter Nygaard was out in the media and pushing the Christie administration to bring in stem cell therapy opportunities to the Bahamas. The Christie administration won that election, Madam Speaker, but there was tremendous controversy within our religious communities and within Bahamian households on a whole. We were beginning, Madam Speaker, with what has been described today as something that is now out of date. Back then, we were beginning to meddle in God's work, Madam Speaker. And there was, Madam Speaker, a business unknown to the majority of the public that had set up on Collins Avenue. It was receiving tissue donations from the Ukraine, donations that were not even being tested for HIV or other serious infections. Madam Speaker, I ask that you limit the points of order. It's going to be a short contribution.
The Chair recognizes the
With
Honourable
all
Member
due
for
respect to the
Stallback.
member for St. Anne's, I think he's actually going in the wrong direction. I do not represent the National Stem Cell Ethics Committee, and I believe that he is making assertions that he cannot substantiate, and I ask him to withdraw them immediately before he create the wrong impression to the international community that our jurisdiction is not monitored. Please, I believe it is distasteful. He has no proof of what he's saying, and if he has proof of what he's saying, please present it to this House of Assembly immediately, because I will be definitely speaking to the representatives of the Ethics Committee, who is responsible for monitoring these protocols that are implemented in the country, and they are safe to provide these therapies throughout our jurisdiction.
Thank you, Honourable Member. St. Anne's?
Speaker, I'm not giving a contribution from the opposition as a salesman for the jurisdiction on longevity and regenerative therapies. It is my duty to add an opposition's view to the bill before us, which is what we are now debating. So the good member for Tall Pines should become a little bit relaxed in his role here. It's not to quiet the opposition, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall Pines.
Madam Speaker, I will allow the member of finance to make his contribution. But he made a statement, and unless he can prove what he's saying, I'm asking him to withdraw it because it sends the wrong message in our jurisdiction. I made it very clear in my contribution that our ethics committee has found instances where there is violation to the way how it's conducted, and those facilities were actually were required to cease and assist any type of activity. When we're dealing with any type of therapy in any country, when we're dealing with medicine in any country, there are regulatory bodies that will find individuals who are trying to do things outside of the regulation. It is our responsibility to step in for cease and desist. So unless he can bring proof of what is happening, I ask him to withdraw those statements and stay within the realms of whatever he can prove.
Madam Speaker, Tall Pines has interrupted me. And now, Yamakra, I'm talking to Madam Speaker. And now, Madam Speaker, he's gone about after two points of order to get to the point that I was making when he interrupted me. When we were dealing with just this matter as a stem cell legislation, there was a business on Collins Avenue that was getting tissue samples from the Ukraine, and it was selling injections to those desperate for a cure to what ailed them for roughly $25,000. CBS, an international television company, came into the region, interviewed persons in the medical field. It was then identified that that type of business did not seem to be ethical. And within 2 hours, Madam Speaker, that business was shut down. And the next day, the people involved in carrying out that business were no longer in the country. So there's been two points of order, Madam Speaker, but from the last comment from the member from Tall Pines, he simply said what I was in the process of saying during my protected contribution period. And that is there are persons that do not operate within the bounds of ethics under the existing legislation that can, even to members of the medical field, go without the knowledge of their operation. And when they do get caught, in that one particular instance, Madam Speaker, they are stopped from continuing, and in that particular case, they left the country. But the point is, Madam Speaker, is we have a very reputable medical field in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And we must, in all cases, ensure that we protect the reputation not only of our doctors, but of the medicine practiced in this region. There are persons, Madam Speaker, whose intentions are not entirely clear, whatever the profession is. We've seen that with FTX, Madam Speaker, and we've seen that with some businesses under the existing legislation. And God only knows, Madam Speaker, what breaches may come under this proposed longevity regenerative therapies bill. Now, when you look, Madam Speaker, at the objects and purposes of this bill, what is striking and concerning for members in the medical profession is the language contained in the first paragraph, Madam Speaker, of the objects and reasons. It says, this bill seeks to establish the Bahamas as a world leader in medical and wellness tourism in the field of longevity and regenerative medicine, and the field of longevity and regenerative medicine will provide significant economic, educational, social, and health and job opportunities for Bahamian citizens and residents. Madam Speaker, a major motivating factor to this bill, it's contained in the first paragraph of the objects and reasons of this bill, is the economic benefit that can come to the region. Now, when persons, Madam Speaker, are chasing money, you can find that their motivations can be obscured by the desire to enrich themselves. And as was the case with that earlier incident that CBS reported on having come to the country, you found that persons were essentially getting a at cost $1 injection, but being billed $25,000 for it.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for talk points.
The member of finance is determined to belittle the science associated with this piece of legislation. And I find it to be very distasteful, and he is actually backing up the wrong tree. This science is internationally recognized. We have been in the business for a decade, and we have developed a strong reputation in the country for regenerative stem cell therapies and gene therapies in the country. This bill is an extension of the 2013 stem cell legislation that helps us to put even a greater regulatory framework in place as these advanced therapies grow and they become more involved. We need the regulatory framework to do so. Now, I have been in consultation with scientists who are experts in these areas. We have been in contact with individuals in law, both nationally and internationally, and we have come up with a piece of legislation that we are proud of. We believe that it has the capability to advance the regulatory regime in country. We have decided to put funding behind the bill so that we could have the trained personnel to monitor the industry. And we believe that Bahamians can benefit from these therapies as they have been doing long time ago, sometimes even abroad. And so for the member to go on and saying someone has given them a saline solution for $25,000, I think we should take the debate a little bit higher than that. If that is his personal view, that's fine. But I want to put it on the record for the international community and scientists and experts around the world to know that we are serious about this piece of legislation, and we're not going to let politics contaminate it. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with the developed world like Japan. And when we brought the scientists in this country in April, we were praised about what we have been doing in the region. And if the member would just go into literature and see where the Bahamas has been recognized for its contribution in stem cell therapy, all he has to do is search the journals.
Thank you, honourable member. Sinance?
I can foresee that today is going to be testy all around, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, going back to this business that CBS reported on, they were selling injections around $25,000 a pop, and they basically cost $1. We don't know the background on the testing. We know that it was a business that brought the attention of the international media. So there wasn't a case of one person coming in, one, I don't know if you would even call them patients, one customer, Madam Speaker, coming in and getting an injection. There had to have been multiple $25,000 injections to be going out to bring in the international media attention to the matter. When you enter into this line of medicine, Madam Speaker, which is basically experimental, you have to be cautious and balance it against the reputation that the Bahamas holds. You're seeing a situation with this legislation where a penalty of $25,000 is meant to be a deterrent, or 2 years in prison. This is actually legislation that could enable some businesses to make multi-million dollars in our region, Madam Speaker. And if you're making millions of dollars off the hopes of persons, because not all of it is going to be genuine, Madam Speaker, when you're selling medicine to persons that have no other resort, Madam Speaker, there almost is no amount of money that they'll be willing to pay to prolong and extend their life, Madam Speaker, to beat that communicable disease, Madam Speaker, that medicine to date hasn't been able to resolve for them. That easy fix, Madam Speaker, you can see the number of weight loss pills and supplements that get sold every day. You know, if I can keep eating my Kit Kat and pop that pill, Madam Speaker, then God bless the manufacturer, Madam Speaker. If that container says natural bush medicine on it, Madam Speaker, then I'm going to know by God is behind this product, Madam Speaker, and I'm going to pop that Kit Kat and that Fanta soda and pop that pill, Madam Speaker. So when we look at it all, Madam Speaker, we have to think of how are we balancing this new area of medicine, Madam Speaker, which, as I said before, is unproven in many instances. How do we balance the economic sexiness of this new medical field against the ethically protected reputation of the practice of medicine in our region already? We all know the childhood story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Can't be too hot and not too cold. If we're going into this, Madam Speaker, we have to get it just right. And from what I've seen, from what I've heard, Madam Speaker, this bill is far from being just right. Madam Speaker, we have a board and we have an ethics committee. The past board under the stem cell legislation was entirely Bahamian, reputable persons in the field of medicine in the Commonwealth of Bahamas carrying out oversight, Madam Speaker. You can find 10 businesses or 10 persons, Madam Speaker, that are going to be reputable. They're not going to create any harm to the reputation of the country. But you can have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, Madam Speaker, that are not practicing in that fine line, that do not have the oversight of the Ethics Committee in time. Look what happened at FTX. We heard in the House from the member for Fox Hill last sitting that there was basically nothing that could have been done to prevent the fraudster. Well, that's an instance with people's money, Madam Speaker. This is not only with people's lives, this is with genetics, Madam Speaker. This is making adjustments to what God has put together, Madam Speaker, for mankind. And we must not only be very careful, Madam Speaker, we must always, as a human race, understand our place and understand God's place in the creation of man and in his time of life here on earth. So, Madam Speaker, it's interesting to know that once again there's been very little consultation with the medical community on this bill. The member for Tall Pines can stand up and say that he's already consulted with the Medical Association, if that's in fact true. No one stood up. Madam Speaker, he can let us know if he's consulted with the Christian Council on this bill, if in fact that's true. Again, no one stood up, Madam Speaker. So we have, Madam Speaker, Another bill dealing with medicine where we all heard the Attorney General got the praise. You have a lawyer who's getting praise for a bill that is going to delve into the genetics of humans, that is going to basically, once it can come under the description of longevity or regenerative therapies, whatever it is, it'll get the green light to begin with. There will be, there may be, there should be, in my opinion, there must be continuous oversight from the Ethics Committee and from the board. But what exactly cannot be done under this broad description of longevity and regenerative therapy, Madam Speaker? It's not my field of work, Madam Speaker, but we've all seen the sci-fi movies. We've all heard of the cases. We all dealt, Madam Speaker, with reputable laboratory that is believed, Madam Speaker, not proven, but believed to have been behind the last release of what became known as COVID-19, Madam Speaker. That had the biggest countries, that had the biggest pockets, Madam Speaker, but we had COVID-19 come out of the province of Wuhan, China, where there was a Wuhan COVID laboratory. No one believed that. You either believe that it came from the laboratory that it's named after, or you believe that a bat and a cat mated and somehow the virus jumped into a bowl of soup. Whatever way, Madam Speaker, you can't go after this, Madam Speaker, with only excitement. You can't let the carrot be waggled in front of your face, Madam Speaker, and bite for that carrot, Madam Speaker. We haven't done this before. Some countries may be doing it, but the Bahamas does not need to rush into this line of medicinal therapy, Madam Speaker. There's too many opportunities for unscrupulous persons to make money off of this, Madam Speaker, to the detriment of our reputation. And God forbid, Madam Speaker, that one of those companies, one of those persons doesn't see an opportunity here and makes a mistake, Madam Speaker, and the Bahamas becomes known as releasing the next catastrophe on the world. For those brief reasons, Madam Speaker, I was about to conclude, but I just want to go back, Madam Speaker, in the bill to the Ethics Committee, the makeup of the Ethics Committee, which I previously said under the existing stem cell legislation has an entirely Bahamian makeup. All of the members are Bahamian members from different bodies in the medicinal community here in the Bahamas. But when you look at this Ethics Committee, Madam Speaker, it says by section 10, subsection 2, the Ethics Committee shall consist of 7 members. The Chief Medical Officer ex officio, that's going to be a Bahamian, Madam Speaker. B, 2 members shall be qualified and experienced in the field. Where are they going to be from? 2 members shall be qualified as having had experience in or having shown capacity and competency in matters relating to business, science, medicine, bioethics, patient advocacy, scientific research ethics, law, or education. And 2 members shall be internationally known specialists in the field. So you have a committee that's going to consist of 2, 4, 6, and then with the Chief Medical Officer, 7. Now, the other 6 members are not identified as needing to be from this jurisdiction. And it actually says at D, 2 of the members shall be internationally known specialists in the field, field being capitalized, which means it should be a defined term. And in the definitions in section 2, field is defined as, field means the global scientific domain of research and administration of therapies that aim to enhance human healthy longevity, including but not limited to gene therapies, stem cell therapies, and or biological materials derived from stem cells, advanced longevity therapies, immunotherapies, cancer therapies, regenerative therapies, functional medicines, and gerontology. What is not included in that isn't known to me, Madam Speaker, but these are 2 persons that definitely won't be from the Bahamas.
Madam Speaker, if the member would just turn his attention to page 5 and look at section 5, the nomination committee. The nomination committee maintains a list of 25 persons qualified to serve on the ethics committees, including obtaining resumes and references of persons included in this list. What happens in regenerative therapies and stem cell therapies? They're therapies where the normal committee will search the international community to find experts in the field. Not every therapy that comes to the Bahamas, the local team has the capability and expertise to address. And so if you were paying attention for the last 10 years with our ethics committee, you will realize that our ethics committee had a combination of Bahamians from civil society, those from business, those from law, those within the science, and it incorporated a large group of individuals who have the expertise in certain types of therapies and companies who are expressing to operate in the Bahamas. So let's say tomorrow there's a new technology that is available internationally and they want to come to the Bahamas. And we do not have the expert in our medical and our scientific community. It is our responsibility for the ethics committee to find an individual who will guide us with the technology and ensure that we make the right steps. And so when we speak about the board and we speak about the ethics committee, both of them are 7 members. But those boards are definitely under the observation of the Minister of Health and Wellness, and it is our responsibility to make sure those boards and ethics committee are operating effectively. In the ethics committee, we have the capability to form subcommittees. And these subcommittees are looking at experts around the world to guide us in the regulatory framework necessary to monitor a certain type of therapy. I beg to disagree with the member from St. Anne's. The member of St. Anne's is preaching a doom and gloom message. I want him to know that when it comes to gene therapies, we have 2 approved, FDA-approved gene therapies to treat sickle cell anemia. We have used exosomes, we've used stem cells in many forms of therapies, and they have been very effective. This is not a snake oil jurisdiction, and I take it very offensive for him to belittle this piece of legislation that many experts around the world, including experts locally, have been a part of this piece of work, and to turn it into Tom and Jerry is sad. It's a sad day in the House of Assembly.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Sad.
I don't know what all the crying is about, Madam Speaker. I'm talking about your colleagues barking up from their back seat. One from West Grand, Bahamas, saying he ain't listening to you, and he's right, I wasn't listening to you. I mean, because once again, you got a point of order. The man is rising up on the honorable man from Tall Pines is rising up on a point of order, Madam Speaker, and he starts off strong, but just like any witness, the more you let them speak, Madam Speaker, the more you realize they don't know what they're talking about. Because my point, when I was again interrupted by a point of order, was that the makeup of the Ethics Committee under this proposed bill, unlike the stem cell bill, it does not restrict it to Bahamians. And so he stood up, the member for Tall Pines stood up. There's too many. I asked you to monitor how many, Madam Speaker. Look at this. Look at this.
Thank you.
The former stem cell bill incorporated both local and international players, so it was not exclusively Bahamian. There is not the technology. We always have to look for expert internationally as well as locally, and if it's not here locally, we have to go internationally.
Thank you. He's saying the exact same thing he did the first time he interrupted on this point. His argument is that his argument seems to be that I am wrong, that the stem cell bill actually was made up, had an ethics committee that was made up of persons that were not Bahamian. Because I was saying that the existing stem cell bill is made up, the ethics committee on the existing stem cell bill is made up of persons that are Bahamian. Yes. But his argument is, but you know, when they don't know something, they get an expert from the international community that serves as a consultant. I don't have any problem with that. Okay. And you can have as many international experts as you want to consult under this bill, if God forbid it comes through. But you need to make the Ethics Committee entirely Bahamian under this bill, which presently it is not. It has one member that is clearly going to be Bahamian and 6 members that could be anyone, and 2 members that are definitely not going to be Bahamian. So if you can make an adjustment to that bill, it'll be better for this bill, because you will actually have Bahamians looking out for the best interest of the Bahamas, and not foreign experts that are looking out for that economic benefit. That case I was talking about earlier, Madam Speaker, dealt with stem cells and involved a gentleman by the last name of Rader. Rader first observed the human injection of fetal stem cells in the mid-1990s at a Ukrainian clinic. In 1995, he began referring his own U.S. patients to Ukraine for fetal stem cell treatment. Rader's first independent stem cell clinic was established in the Bahamas. The clinic reopened in the Dominican Republic after the Bahamian government asked Rader to leave in 2000, following a critical television report aired in the United States. Madam Speaker, this is not a snake-oil jurisdiction. I agree with Tall Pines on that. But when you enter into legislation like this, you have to get it just right. And this goes far beyond dabbling in God's work that stem cell therapy did. This is basically giving you a pot that is so large that just about any type of therapy can come under it. And where it'll take the country, where it'll take the safety of our people and the persons that come here for these therapies, Madam Speaker, is at this point unknown. You can have 10 good apples, and you can have 1 bad apple, Madam Speaker. And that 1 bad apple, Madam Speaker, despite the intimidating $25,000 fine, is not going to be good enough to save this jurisdiction's reputation should something negative happen. Madam Speaker, with those comments and on this bill, the member for St. Anne's thanks you for the protection, and I will now take my seat. Thank you.
And Chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall
Just
Pines.
before, and I will go into this more detail during the wrap-up, but if the member was to look at what he was referring to the Ethics Committee, the member will see that members of the Ethics Committee shall be appointed by, and he should have pointed out that there's a typo in the area too, he usually does, because they say by the, but we'll fix the typo. Minister, following the recommendations of the nomination committee. Okay, the nomination committee. So I want to refer him back to the nomination committee. And the nomination committee is a committee providing recommendations to the minister in the form of the list of persons qualified to serve on the Ethics Committee after consultation with the relevant local and international bodies, scientific bodies, religious and faith-based organizations, and patient advocacy groups based on the criteria of composition of the Ethics Committee as outlined in the Act. You see what it is if he was to just read what the nomination committee does, and the nomination committee is the committee that pretty much is responsible for interviewing candidates who will serve on the ethics committee, and the Minister of Health is the person who is responsible. And when you use the minister, you're also referring to cabinet to some degree. So I'm going to go into more details. I think he has read portions of the bill and not the complete bill, which is creating the confusion in his own mind.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker, I read that portion of the bill, and he even had an earlier point of order on this nomination committee and the list of 25. He also now touched on the fact that there will be consultation with the religious community. All of those things are going to be done, as this administration has done numerous times. All of those things are going to be done after the fact. They've not consulted these bodies before bringing this bill in the House of Assembly. They're going to do it after the fact, and they're going to consult them. Madam Speaker, when we close the sitting today, and I pass you at the stairwell, I can stop you for a moment and tell you what's going on, and you can give me a response. You may not agree with me, but we would have consulted on the matter. And I know that I've met my legislative requirement to consult with members of a particular community or body in this country. There isn't anything, Madam Speaker, the point between you and I being now complete, there isn't anything, Madam Speaker, that says you have to acquiesce these bodies, you have to make a decision based on their advice. It just means, Madam Speaker, that I must punch a hole in the requirement. There's something that I have to do, I'll do it. I'm not going to pay attention to it after all. It's not a true, Madam Speaker, it's not a true consultation process that's going to impact. And at the end of the day, there's going to be a list of 25. And again, it's not restricted to Bahamians, Madam Speaker. That's the point. You can have persons on the Ethics Committee that aren't even in the country, Madam Speaker, to supervise however many businesses it is. There's no restriction on the number of licenses, Madam Speaker, that can be issued in a single year under this bill. So you could potentially go from having no businesses practicing in this field to 1,000 businesses practicing in this field. And you have to ask, is an ethics committee of 7 people sufficient to monitor them? We had a whole commission, Madam Speaker, that couldn't regulate and catch the frauds carried out by Sam Bankman-Fried in this jurisdiction, Madam Speaker. This isn't about money, Madam Speaker. This is about the human makeup of mankind, extending lives. I mean, who's interested in extending lives? Do people really want to live beyond their 80? Do they want to live into their hundreds? Yeah, I do, Madam Speaker. But that was never God's plan. Madam Speaker. And when I said I do, Madam Speaker, I was referring to Tall Pines gesturing in his seat that he does. I don't.
Yeah, well, between me and you.
I'm a married man, Madam Speaker. I've raised my children, and I'm going to let the next generation come in. I'm not sitting here. I'm not trying to sit over. I'm not trying to maintain control for the rest of my life.
Madam Speaker, the member for Finance, I refer him back to the responsibilities of the Ethics Committee. And I'm going to go into this in full details in the wrap-up, because if he was to just read the responsibilities of the Ethics Committee, he will see that the Ethics Committee has Bahamians and foreign nationals as part of the plan. And the reason why that's important is because when it comes to these sophisticated regenerative therapies, We may not have always the expertise in country, and we must rely on those experts abroad to guide us to make sure that we make the right decisions. But I will go into the details. But since he mentioned longevity, with all due respect, if I could put on some additional years, I'll take it. If you don't want, that's your choice. And so I'm always looking for new therapies for longevity. And when I do find them, I utilize them to the best of my ability to stay healthy. That is my choice, and I accept that responsibility. You can do whatever you want, but I intend to live as long as I possibly can.
The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker, in terms of the section that the member for Tall Pines raised on the Nomination Committee and the Ethics Committee, I'd only make one point and reserve my comments for when I get up to speak. But Madam Speaker, if there's any takeaway from the member of St. Anne's presentation, Madam Speaker, it is the government's unwillingness to consult as widely as is necessary in advance of these pivotal pieces of legislation, because truly there might be potential to assist persons who are facing debilitating diseases, which incidentally was not the primary focus of the speech delivered earlier. It really hammered on the economic front. But the medical council, Madam Speaker, has not been consulted. Really, the principal umbrella organization relative to healthcare have to date not been consulted. Then when you look at civil society and the faith-based organization, and I'm back just to his point of order, they have not been consulted. And then there's a third category, Madam Speaker, which is related to those who played a pivotal role in drafting the first stem cell bill. And that group underscored the value of advanced consultation. It does not remove the responsibility from this administration to not go through another round of consultation, because this bill expands the latitude of therapies that would be introduced. And those persons, back with the stem cell bill, Madam Speaker, a number of them, they were not consulted. Now, if he has consulted some of them and we miss them in our phone calls, it would be useful for him to put on the record who they are. But those we spoke to from that group, the first group that framed the stem cell bill, the medical council who's in place today, the faith-based organization with those representatives from civil society, they have not been consulted.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Yes, just to speak a little bit about what Marco City said. He said that we focus on the financial benefits of the bill. I beg to disagree. This is real science, and we're speaking about cures, improving the quality of lives of Bahamians and foreign nationals who choose to use our jurisdiction for these therapies. But I want to point your attention to section 4, which speaks about the policy. The minister shall prepare a longevity and regenerative therapy policy, the policy, which shall be approved by Cabinet and laid in the House of Assembly. The policy shall be reviewed every 2 years and updated and approved by Cabinet and laid in the House of Assembly. The Board and Ethics Committee shall carry out their duties and powers under the Act in accordance to the policy. And so I want to make it very clear that when I laid this bill, once you lay a bill in this House of Assembly, it is placed for consultation. We did receive some consultation in support of the bill. And I just want to make it very clear that we're not reinventing the wheel. We have a bill now that does not have the regulatory framework to address the improvements and the advancement in regenerative therapies. And we need to establish the framework in order to do so. And so all we're doing is we're not reinventing the wheel, Marco City. We are simply repealing and replacing a bill that does not have the capacity to do what already exists. And back to St. Anne's, we have a regulatory framework. And when we find a rotten apple, we move and we get them out of our jurisdiction. We have in the medical community individuals who practice medicine on a daily basis that are subjected to malpractice. And there are protocols in place to address them in malpractice. And so while we have therapies that are beneficial to Bahamians, we have instances where things can go wrong And that is when the regulatory framework must take precedence in order to address these things and subject them to the laws of the land. We have, no, what we did was, like every bill, this bill has been around, the bill we're repealing has been around for 10 years, more than 10 years now. We've been through this, we've monitored it, we have done what we wanted with it, and it has outgrown its ability for the industry. We foreshadowed this bill coming in the speech from the throne. We laid the bill. There has been people, when we laid the bill, who have responded to what we are trying to accomplish, and we addressed those concerns. Well, it has been out there. It's been out there, Marco City. It's been out there. Not every bill you have to physically go to everyone and consult, like how we did with the cannabis bill. The cannabis bill was widely, and people will say we haven't consulted, but we consulted widely with the cannabis bill. This is simple repealing and replacing a bill. All groups are important. All groups are important, and many of healthcare providers in the country are looking forward to this bill to be a part of this lucrative industry, including members on the side opposite who have been praising the bill. If you attended our conference when we brought the international community in, this bill was discussed widely, This was discussed widely in the open. This is nothing where we're hiding anything. This is straightforward. And the only thing we're doing now is improving the regulatory framework. Some people feel the industry shouldn't be there, and that's fine. But there are a lot of people who are excited about this industry and will benefit from the medical therapies that will be provided from this industry. I can give you an example. The other day, the Stem Cell Committee was confronted with a group who wanted to introduce psychedelics into the country to treat post-traumatic stress disorders. So as we did the research, we realized that the double-blinded trials in the United States have proved beneficial effects for the use of psychedelics in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorders in military people who have these serious complications. And so they were looking for a jurisdiction where they can use these drugs in collaboration with psychiatrists and psychologists to treat some of these very difficult post-traumatic stress disorder cases. The bills themselves, too primitive to address them. And so what we need to do is, if we're going to be a jurisdiction, we need to have the legal framework in order to do it. And so this particular bill addressed that. There's always time for more and more consultation. And between me and you, we're satisfied that our consultations were adequate. We're satisfied when we did our Health Inc. Summit, and we had this open discussion with legal consultants from the UK, from the United States, with many local physicians who expressed interest in this field, were at the event, and they are excited for us to bring this forward and begin now to expand our capability and blueprint for gene therapy, longevity, cancer therapy in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and to allow scientists to combine with local Bahamians, because you cannot get in this industry unless you have a local Bahamian partner or a clinician working along with you who can improve the delivery of healthcare services by the transference of knowledge from these highly technical biotechnical teams. And so I'm satisfied with the bill. Consultation can go on and on. We believe that we need to pass this bill and enact this bill so that we can enhance our regulatory framework in the country and get on with providing these essential therapies that a lot of Bahamians are going abroad to receive.
Thank you. Senator, member.
Hines made a comment, replied back to me to say that if there was something that he could take to live longer, he would. Madam Speaker, as was the case with this Raider gentleman, where there was the injection of fetal stem cells, I can say for a fact, Madam Speaker, that I won't be injecting anything like fetal stem cells into my body, even if it means that I will live longer. And I'd like for the member for Tall Pines, Minister of Health, to officially say for the record that no part of this new hospital facility, which is classified according to the Bahamas government website as a specialty hospital, a facility that will house 200 beds and focus on the needs of women and children. It will, in addition, offer other healthcare services such as neonatal intensive care unit, a morgue, and technology to assist in infection prevention and control measures. None of the human body materials that will go into the longevity and regenerative therapies practice that's coming up in the Bahamas will come from this new Bahamian hospital, Madam Speaker. And it's interesting to me, not only that these two have some connection, Madam Speaker, but the bill that had great consultation, as the member for Tall Pines just admitted, the cannabis bill, has been moved back in the legislative agenda to allow this bill to be pushed forward. So can the Minister for Tall Pines state for the record that no human materials that are at this new hospital will be used or permitted to be used in the longevity and regenerative therapies that are envisioned under this legislation?
Madam Speaker, the member for Zadans is really taking the debate to as low as you possibly can. In the healthcare industry, there are many procedures that are done that stem cells are a part of. We do stem cells in the process of treating various types of leukemias, treating lymphomas. As a matter of fact, when you're actually doing a bone marrow transplant, in many types of illnesses, you do use stem cells, and you do use exosomes and many different types of tissue. This is what modern medicine is about. When you begin to treat sophisticated cancers that requires bullet attack on certain tumors, all different types of cellular tissues can be used. And for him to make a statement that a doctor who practiced medicine in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, who want to use cellular tissues in the treatment of their patients, will not have access to a tertiary healthcare facility, I find that to be ludicrous. And the reality is that any hospital in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, under a licensed physician, whether it be foreign or Bahamian, who are practicing advanced medical procedures in the country and are using FDA-approved components as well as other forms of treatment to improve lives, to cure debilitating medical illnesses, are welcome in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And Smini, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Long Island.
Madam Speaker, I thank you. Madam Speaker, it's an honor to rise in this place on behalf of the great people of Long Island. Madam Speaker, before I commence my contribution on this bill, I want to address some of our needs and concerns in Long Island. And these are some daily concerns that are communicated to me. Madam Speaker, you know, it's the rainy season. And so with that, you got a lot of mosquitoes. And there's a complaint about mosquitoes on the island. And I'm hoping that we can get some spraying done there. However, the Department of Environmental Health, I understand, is challenged with the material to spray. And so I call upon the Ministry of Environmental Health and the Minister and those responsible, because we got a boat going there tomorrow, Tuesday, and I think another one on Wednesday, to get that material into Long Island so that the personnel on the ground can move about the island and spray, because mosquitoes are wreaking havoc on Long Island. And given all this rain, Madam Speaker, you know, you kill some, they come back, you kill them, they come back. So they need the supplies. Madam Speaker, the road situation, it's beyond deplorable. And we're waiting, given the budgetary cycle, the fiscal year kicks in today, We are waiting and ready, Central and South Eleuthera. We are anxious. Say again? Oh, we are, Central and South Eleuthera says we had a bad load of stuff come yesterday. I hope then that is put down. No, that's for Stella Mars. That's already done. We're talking about the areas where particularly between Grace and Seymour's, or even goes Clarence as well, and I think some parts of Buckley's and Cartwright's, where you have potholes, huge craters. You know, man, driving on Long Island is like driving on a golf course with huge craters, except that the cars are the golf balls. Okay? And so this is ridiculous and unacceptable. I appreciate that they've sent material for the road work in Stella Mars. And I appreciate the cold patch that you're talking about for regatta. However, you've been to the regatta. You saw the condition of the roads. You experienced the condition of the roads. And so we are asking you to send more cold patch. But guess what? You're now in power, my brother. You're now in power. Fix it. You're now in power. Fix it. Fix it. You're now in power. So we did our part. This is a relay. Your time to do your part. The same part that you're fixing in Stella Mars and those areas. That part. That's what we did. Government is a relay. You take the baton and you now help us with getting the issues resolved in Long Island. Madam Speaker, there's also a need for drainage wells on the island. Here again, we're having challenges with the rainy season, where the roads are full of water. Persons are, vehicles are cutting off on the road. People are, the pothole situation and the water, that makes it even worse. So conditions are pretty horrible in terms of the road situation in Long Island. Madam Speaker, with respect to this bill, there's some who would call this the Peter Nygaard Bill Part 2, Madam Speaker. If this, and we could all remember the group of PLP ministers at the time down at Nygaard Key laughing and introducing themselves and so on and so forth.
Stay focused.
Madam Speaker, I accept, Madam Speaker, that stem cell research holds tremendous promise, revolutionizing treatments for a myriad of conditions, ranging from neurological disorders to cancers to chronic diseases. I accept that. But, Madam Speaker, on the halls of a lackluster status quo budget, how does this bill run on the heels of this, I should say? How does this bill immediately benefit the people of the Bahamas? And we're hearing that there's been little to no consultation with the medical council about the rollout of this bill. This bill can be a step forward in health care. However, how does it immediately affect everyday citizens? Because there are people every day who are in dire need of immediate assistance. There are issues that could be addressed that could immediately have an impact upon everyday citizens. Madam Speaker, here again, we see this administration, bringing a bill for everything that's already in existence, repealing what's there, and I guess to come back and lay their version of the bill and claim credit for it. We've seen a number of bills thus far in the same vein, just repealing or amending and then having a debate. Nothing new, nothing significant, nothing groundbreaking. At this rate, soon they'll be bringing a Skipping Rocks bill, to use the words of the member for St. Anne's. Madam Speaker, where are the strict regulations to ensure that these ethical standards are upheld? And what are the downsides? The member for St. Anne's mentioned, he spoke about fetuses, and we see the mention of human embryos and fetuses in this bill. Now the question is, I've always been curious, could taking a dead baby and using the cells really extend one's life? Could that really happen? What science proves that? And I'm curious, what does PMH currently do with the placenta and umbilical cord from newborn babies? And are they being used for stem cell research? Are permissions been sought from whomever the parents are?
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Tall
Speaker,
Pines.
I just want to clarify something for Long Island. When it comes to tissue remains of Bahamian citizens or those who utilize our healthcare services, if the parent want the remain of their child and their placenta, they have the capability to do so. But I assure you, there is no collection of remains of any placenta being collected for research purposes or for regeneration at any of our tertiary healthcare facilities. And if it's being done, it is being done illegally. And if anyone is found in possession or in the attempt to do it, they will be prosecuted by the fullest extent of the law. Do not mix this up by shooting these innuendos all over the place, because the reality is that we run a very clean jurisdiction, and we intend to do so. And there are people who would say many things. I remember years ago they were saying that we were harvesting organs, and the list goes on and on. These are untruths, and I rebuke them. They are definitely not happening legally at any of our healthcare facilities.
Thank you, honorable member. Long Island.
To shoot innuendos. I mentioned this bill mentions a human embryo and fetus, and I'm happy that the member for Tall Pines has cleared up that no one at any of the hospitals in this country is authorized to take the placenta and umbilical cord of any newborn baby or any remains. Because I wasn't speaking about the remains, I was speaking about the umbilical cord and the placenta. But he's clarified that no one does that, and I hope that is the case. Now, Madam Speaker, depending on the context, we have all heard stories of stem cell therapy. We've heard the stories either as a benchmark or as a cautionary tale. So the question is, how does the government ensure equitable access to stem cell therapies for all patients, all vines, considering factors such as cost and availability and medical necessity? How? Madam Speaker, I'm a believer in the importance of evidence-based medicine and the need for rigorous scientific studies to validate the efficacy and safety of therapies such as stem cell therapy before widespread adoption. And so speaking of that and the need for these studies, I go back to what my colleague from St. Anne's spoke of with respect to the nomination committee, Section 5 of this bill. Section 5, subsection 2 says the board shall select a nomination committee comprised of 3 appropriately qualified persons with the knowledge, experience, and expertise in the field, and following consultation with the minister. So the question is, and this is a genuine question, who in the Bahamas currently possess the knowledge or possess the expertise and the experience to sit on this nomination committee? How many Bahamians? How many Bahamians?
Tall Pines.
Humans who are well-read and who are part of regenerative medicine and longevity therapies. I would not sit here and give names, but I assure you that there are Bahamians in our jurisdiction who have the expertise in this area, and there are Bahamians who are behind this particular administration to ensure that we pass this bill so that they can expand their technological abilities within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas rather than doing it outside. And yes, there are Bahamians outside of our jurisdiction who are part of this industry who want to come home and to utilize their expertise in the country. So with all due respect, there are Bahamians who are involved in this industry, and there are many more Bahamians who want to get involved and who want to have the transference of knowledge, but we need a jurisdiction in our country where it can be accomplished, and this bill leads the way in order for bringing some of this talented Bahamians abroad back home to be leaders in this industry and to benefit financially in the industry and provide these life-changing therapies in country at affordable rates.
Madam Speaker.
No, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To all points, I hope that you're going to respond to every point I make in my presentation, because you know you do have to wrap up to all points. But you got more coming than to all points. You got more coming. You know, Madam Speaker, Section 10 of this bill, which speaks to the members of the Ethics Committee. You know, given some of the challenges we have with enforcement as is, you look at various councils in the Bahamas, who's going to enforce the findings and/or decisions of the Ethics Committee? How is enforcement going to happen? And I do agree, I share the view that every member of this committee should be a Bahamian. Everyone, every single member should be a Bahamian. They have no place else to go. No place else to go. Their interest is our interest. Ours is mutual. So when you see when you read subsection 4 of section 10, which speaks about members being appointed for 3 years and then shall be eligible for reappointment. If we are talking about foreign persons coming in here and just being appointed for 3 years and being eligible for reappointment, then you're talking about a long time. These persons could be here, maybe in pursuit of their own interests. But I support the view that each and every member of this committee should be a Bahamian. Madam Speaker, you know, there are always concerns when it comes to therapies such as this. You know, you talk about embryonic stem cells, you know, the use of these cells, you know, we've heard about the significant ethical issues, particularly when you hear stories internationally about the destruction of human embryos. You talk about informed consent. You know, we hear, and I'm sure the member for Tall Pines understands what I'm saying here, where we must ensure that persons fully understand the risk, the benefits, and the experimental nature of some stem cell therapies. That's important, very important. Then, of course, there's safety and efficacy. We've heard, all of us, you know, or those of us who've certainly done some research about this, have heard about some of the concerns with stem cell therapy from tumor formations. We've heard that stem cells can sometimes form tumors if not properly controlled. We've heard of the immune rejection, where there's a risk that a patient's immune system could reject transplanted stem cells. And then, of course, there are the unproven treatments. You know, those that are still in the experimental stage, etc. So we need to be careful as we move forward with having proper oversight, well-manned oversight of this area of medical practice. Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall Pines.
For the member of Long Island, the point of order is the way how you presenting your contribution. It's misleading this House and misleading the Bahamian people. Let me explain. Let me explain why. That's your point. But I say a point of order. I know you. The point of order. The point of order is, Madam Speaker, I'm on my feet. Please protect me. Well, between me and you, that's why I'm saying. But that's your opinion.
And that's yours.
No, that's why I have a point of order. That's why under the rules I have the capability.
Honourable members.
Yes. As the point of rules, I'm standing on my feet because the member is presenting something that is misleading this House and the Bahamian people. Let me finish.
Member,
You've indicated that stem cells are rejected in transplants. And between me and you, he's making it seem as if stem cells cannot be rejected because they can be rejected in many forms of therapies. Do you know that in vaccinations? No, I'm telling you. You're misleading this House.
Madam Speaker, I rise on a point of order. This member is misleading the House. Madam Speaker, I will read exactly what I said. I said immune rejection. I said there's a risk that a patient's immune system could reject transplanted stem cells. It happens all the time. Just plug it into Google, okay? This is not the norm, but it happens.
Madam
a
Speaker.
patient's immune system could reject transplanted stem cells.
I agree.
Same way.
I
You
agree.
agree now?
I agree.
Same
No,
way,
I'm not arguing that.
Same way how someone's system
I'm
could
not
reject
arguing that point.
the heart or a liver.
The point that I'm arguing is that you're
I will
creating
not
the
allow you to do
impression.
that.
You're creating the impression that because of the components of this bill, we anticipate stem cells to be rejected, and I disagree with that.
thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Kalani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a very scientific bill. I don't think that's what the member was basically saying. What the member basically saying is in the human body, anything can be rejected. The immune system can reject anything. I can eat a candy and not to be rejected. I develop an anaphylaxis. So that's all he's saying.
If I may. No. If I may. It's okay to present it in a terms that is a layman terms. But the reality is these are complicated immunological and stem cell therapies, and we cannot water it down and create the impression on our feet that because we're putting this, they're going to be rejected. And that's the kind of projection that I sense that you were trying to go. If I am misled, if I am misinformed, you see, because I think in a particular scientific way. You're moving in a direction, and the member for Canali pointed it out. Between me and you, I wanted to make sure that I made it very clear that the regulatory framework that is outlined in this bill is not that simple. But I now will concede because I don't think you meant any harm with what you said, but the way you said it created the wrong impression, and that's what I'm objecting to.
Madam Speaker, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I was pretty clear. The member for Tall Pines' impression is his impression. Okay, I was very, very clear with what I stated here. And Madam Speaker, I will repeat it for the member for Tall Pines' knowledge. I spoke about immune rejection. I said there is a risk of a patient's immune system rejecting transplanted stem cells. Same as happens with the heart. If there's a heart transplant, a kidney transplant, a liver. This is straight up and down. Okay? There's nothing to get touches about in here. Madam Speaker, you know, we talk about the technical hurdles as it relates to stem cell research. And one of the things we have to be concerned with is to ensure that, you know, that stem cells differentiate when you look at the desired cell type without forming unwanted cell types. That's a technical challenge. I spoke earlier about tumors being formed, you know, and this is easy research. And then, of course, here we are at the legislation and regulatory stage. And so we have challenges. One of the challenges we will have, as I mentioned earlier, is enforcement. Who is going to enforce the findings of the Ethics Committee? My colleague from St. Anne's mentioned earlier the fact that there is no limitation on the amount of shops that could be set up. And when I say shops, I use that casually. That could be set up to say they do stem cell research, stem cell therapy in this country. Okay, and we're all curious to see what the regulations would look like. That's a fact. You know, when it comes to this therapy, longevity and regenerative therapies, across the world, there are issues of patenting issues. How do we in the Bahamas navigate the intellectual property landscape, which includes patents on stem cell lines and techniques, which can be challenging, and they can hinder research and development. How do we navigate that? And as I spoke about earlier, with respect to enforcement and monitoring compliance, we need robust monitoring and enforcement mechanisms. My colleague is right. That's the reality. Around the world, Madam Speaker, we hear stories of unlicensed clinics operating, not only in the stem cell therapy arena, but in various other spheres of medical practice. Even law. You got lawyers practicing without licenses. So how do we ensure that we don't have a proliferation of unlicensed and unregulated stem cell clinics offering unproven treatments and posing a significant risk in this country to patient safety? How do we do that? How do we man the enforcement bodies to ensure that happens? Or will there be a free-for-all? Madam Speaker, we know that stem cell therapies can be prohibitively expensive and limit access to only those who could afford it. And so my opening comments related to the impact of this on the average everyday Bahamian. How does the average everyday Bahamian benefit from this, given the cost prohibitive, how cost prohibitive this is? That's the reality. Even with insurance, people with insurance, already high insurance premiums. It's difficult to get insurance coverage for experimental or new stem treatments. Well, it's very challenging. And the member for Tall Pines and I, we have a personal story between us that he's aware of, okay? Where insurance companies, you pay every month, but when it's time to use it, they start running for the hills and making excuses. And when it comes to the experimental therapies, even medicine from countries that have sanctions, Madam Speaker, insurance companies won't cover it. And the member for Tall Pines can attest to this. You get medicine coming out of places like Russia, for example. That won't be covered. So how do we reconcile stem cell therapy in the Bahamas with the insurance companies and coverage for the same? And then, of course, Madam Speaker, there's public perception. Public perception. You got public misconceptions and misinformation about the capabilities of stem cell therapy. And you also have it about the risk. So where's the public education campaign? How do we manage the expectations, the hype versus the reality? We must manage public expectations to reflect the current state of science and the realistic potential of stem cell therapies. This is very crucial going forward. And in setting up, like I said earlier, any ethical framework or ethical guidelines, it must be robust. We must ensure that we have transparent and informed transparent and informed consent processes for all patients involved in stem cell therapy, or if an embryo or placenta or umbilical cord is to be used. We must get people's direct consent if this happens in the future. And so, Madam Speaker, as I stated earlier, I believe that there is some potential as it relates to stem cell therapy. However, it isn't as straightforward as one might think. This is a lot of gray areas with the black and white. Madam Speaker, we must enhance international collaboration if we want to harmonize standards and regulations in the Bahamas with the highest standards abroad, with the highest standards. And so, in that vein, I think we are starting off wrong, because thus far, we don't see any public education campaigns on this matter? Where are the public education campaigns on this matter? I have not heard a single word. I have not heard a single word about it. I haven't even heard a single word since I've been here this morning about anyone launching any educational campaigns to inform the public about the realities and the potential of stem cell therapy. Nothing. And what about the stakeholders? Where are they in all of this? Nowhere from what I'm seeing. Usually the gallery is full with people who are a part of the stakeholder body. There's no stakeholder representation in the gallery. None. I don't see a doctor. I don't see anyone from the Ministry of Health. I don't see anyone from the Medical Council. I see no one. No one. Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, has the government engaged the stakeholders? And where are they today? And has the government engaged with patient advocacy groups to ensure patient perspectives are considered in the policy making, particularly as it relates to this particular bill? And you know, the question is, what does the church have to say about it? Now, I go down the middle. But you know, in the Bahamas, we do make reference to the church. And so I believe as we move forward, and we look at bills like this, we could stake the passage of this to ensure we have a proper public education campaign, to ensure that we have proper consultation with the various stakeholders and the wider community. And Madam Speaker, on that note, Long Island rests.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Asmini, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise today to represent the great people of Central and South Eleuthera. I'd like to thank them for the opportunity to represent them here in the House of Assembly. I'm reminded of a passage, Madam Speaker, Galatians 6, that reads, listen, and let us not be weary in well-doing. Not yet. For in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Over the past few months, the residents of my constituency and throughout the entire island have experienced a multitude of challenges related to the delivery of essential services such as electricity and water, and subsequent challenges with both providers. Madam Speaker, on Thursday, June 27th, hosted a town meeting along with a member for North Eleuthera, as well as a member for Central and South Andros, who has responsibility for the carriage of water and sewage, the board and management of water and sewage, and executives from Bahamas Power and Light. Madam Speaker, the teams present at that meeting were informative and offered practical, short-term and long-term solutions to the challenges that we are facing in Eleuthera. Madam Speaker, the people of Eleuthera deserves the best. The member for North Eleuthera and myself inherited these failing systems, and to correct the issues and provide stability going forward, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of the Bahamas has committed to doing what is necessary to fix it. We are committed to utilizing every resource in our collective arsenal to tackle these problems head-on. And with the support of the communities we represent, we expect that this will be accomplished forthwith as we explore the solutions. So on behalf of my colleagues, I extend a heartfelt appreciation to the residents of Eleuthera for their commentary, their suggestions, and participation at the town meeting. Madam Speaker, this Davis-led administration continues to push the envelope and to find creative and innovative ways to stabilize our economy. Really?
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Long Island.
I was thinking to let it slide, but you know, the member for Central and South Eleuthera stated just now that they inherited failing systems, right? And to an extent, I agree with him, right? In that they inherited some bad contracts, which we inherited. But, Madam Speaker, no sir, not a day like it. Madam Speaker, when we left office, Madam Speaker, a brand new plant was installed in South Eleuthera, Waterford to be exact, was to be brought online. We left office for that to be brought online. One was in Waterford, one in San Salvador, one in Inagua. Moores Island was brought online, Long Island was brought online. Since that time, that plant has been uprooted from Waterford, and I have photographs of a brand new plant, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's parked in the bushes in Central Eleuthera and not in use. Terrible. In the bushes. I got photos a couple of days ago out of Eleuthera. And this is a plant that could have resolved much of the water issues in Eleuthera. Madam Speaker, a new plant was also installed in North Eleuthera, right? Now, granted, Madam Speaker, these contracts are very bad contracts. However, Madam Speaker, however, Madam Speaker, I'm still on my point of order. However, Madam Speaker, however, I would love for you to do so, because I can as well. However, Madam Speaker, there are a number of plants that were coming due, and the question is, I think it's Aqua Design, by the way, has a monopoly on Eleuthera. There are 4 different locations in Eleuthera. Monopoly from North Eleuthera to Central, to Tappan Bay, to Waterford. Aqua Design runs the entire. I couldn't believe it that one company was given a monopoly on this island. And all of the contracts, all but one, was signed by a PLP government. The other contract that was signed in 2011 by Dr. Hubert Ingram, not Dr. Hubert Ingram, by the former Prime Minister, his administration in 2011, right? However, Madam Speaker, many of those plants are currently, the contracts for those plants are currently due. And I understand that either the government has signed those plants over or is thinking to. But here's the other thing, Madam Speaker. I have also come to understand, Madam Speaker, I'm going to wrap up right now. Madam Speaker, I'm going to wrap up. Madam Speaker, I'm going to wrap up. I have come to understand, Madam Speaker, this is the final time, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I understand that the government, Madam Speaker, is selling the plants that Water and Sewage owned to the very company, Aqua Design, Madam Speaker, that is causing all these problems in Eleuthera.
My Lord.
What's interesting is a member for Long Island, a couple sessions ago, tabled documents to say that the plant in Central Eleuthera, right? The plant. Oh, what's Eleuthera?
Where's Eleuthera?
Where's Eleuthera?
Where's Eleuthera?
You know, so he tabled these documents in here, right? To say it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who signed a contract for Central Eleuthera for Aqua Design a couple of days before election because he wanted the people to have water when they voted. So he's the one who tabled them to say it wasn't me who signed the contract for Central Eleuthera. What do you mean? You said you didn't sign any contracts?
I didn't sign it.
So who signed it? 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 So you blaming somebody on that side? Okay. I just want to make sure what he was trying to say. No, you didn't. You want to continue. You want to debate on water and sewage. But let me tell you, because, and I can't say that I disagree in regards to the supplier for Eleuthero, right? Now, the challenge is the way in which Long Island dealt with them.
That's what it is.
They cut off supply to the whole of Eleuthero just before election. The whole of Eleuthero. They cut off supply. So then the Prime Minister at that time, had to take it into his own hands to ensure the people of Eleuthero had water.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Long Island.
Madam Speaker, first of all, Madam Speaker, this company, Aqua Design, we formed a reverse osmosis unit at the Water and Sewage Corporation, headed by engineers and various other personnel who had the understanding and the expertise. We recruited them, even brought in a consultant who now is in Saudi Arabia. They let him go. And do you know, Madam Speaker, under this administration, they allowed the entire reverse osmosis unit to be gutted. Madam Speaker. All of the engineers have been hired by Aqua Design. All of the engineers. And speaking of renegotiation, Aqua Design wanted to renegotiate their contracts. What we did, Madam Speaker, we told Aqua Design, if you want to renegotiate a contract, you have to build in a transfer mechanism in there. They did not wish to do so. Okay? We have the meeting minutes. I can table those as well. I never attended any meetings, but I do have copies of them.
Come speak to it.
I do have copies of it.
Thank you. Central and South.
You speak about planes, speak about water.
Thank you. But I agree.
We agree.
But I just want to prove the point that a contract was signed
Right. You have
for
to
the plant
intervene,
in
former
Central
Prime
Eleuthero.
Minister,
You had to
because he
intervene
botched it up.
to make sure that people get water election day.
Absolutely.
Back to the
If you're thirsty.
back to the bill at hand.
It's the boss who signed it.
Madam,
Because you botch up your deal.
Madam Speaker, this administration
Some facts on you.
continues to explore
Make no sense.
and develop new avenues of revenue streams
It never worked. Never worked.
to ensure that the Commonwealth of the Bahamas enjoy a robust economy.
If you keep pushing now, we can show it to them. We can show you up.
But we can table them. Already we have seen and reaped the benefits of the decisions made by the Ministry of Finance and its team as we continue to receive commendations from the IDB, Moody's, and the IMF. The policies that have been implemented over the past 2.5 years have restored our reputation around the world, and we continue to evolve. Madam Speaker, I would like to congratulate the member for Tall Pines, as well as the Attorney General's office for being forward-thinking to embark on these new ideas that could prove beneficial to the further growth and development of the Bahamas economy, with the collaboration of the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health and Wellness in establishing the Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, this bill seeks to expand on the current legislation that enacted the Stem Cell Research and Therapy Act 2013. What we do know, Madam Speaker, is that the world of science and technology changes rapidly. As a country, we must ensure that we create the necessary platforms for safety, innovation, and growth. This bill seeks to do just that. And in addition, the appointment of the National Longevity and Regenerative Therapy Ethics Review Committee to regulate and monitor the activities of the sector. Madam Speaker, the Bahamas has much to offer. Other countries in this jurisdiction are advertising their medical research and medical procedures and other medical services in our country. Bahamians in great numbers are traveling abroad to receive medical services, be it for body enhancements, dental services, cancer treatment, vision treatment, catastrophic health care, and there are some people that seek care for diseases, health challenges that are untreatable right here at home. Madam Speaker, the innovation that can be harnessed from medical research in the Bahamas offers an additional revenue stream, and it provides for an increase in medical tourism. The implementation of this bill helps to solidify our commitment to growth, and new practices that may be established as a result of this bill can potentially increase the opportunities for employment and specialization for members of the medical profession. Madam Speaker, another key component of this bill addresses the safety of the patients that may be involved in these studies. The bill seeks to ensure that all patients are reliably informed of the rules, outcomes, and specifically protect their rights. Madam Speaker, this bill represents a critical opportunity to modernize and to revitalize our medical research sector for the benefit of all Bahamians, medical researchers locally and globally. And by embracing innovation, fostering competition, and prioritizing safety and accountability, we can expand on and provide a more resilient and responsive infrastructure in medical research. Madam Speaker, I didn't intend to be too long because the member for Tall Pines laid out the facts of the bill, and the member for Golden Gates outlined how this bill will grow the economy and further develop medical tourism. But Madam Speaker, I was a little concerned the direction for St. Anne's in regards to this debate to this bill. The member for Long Island, he started off a little rough, but he come back around towards the end of this debate. But in section 17, when it speaks about the prohibited acts, it speaks about number one, no person or entity shall genetically modify a human embryo with the intent of that embryo becoming a living human. So all of these issues, the next one speaks about the test for gene therapies on patients without informed consent, purposely modify the germline of an adult human. All of these are prohibited acts, Madam Speaker. The transplant of an edited human embryo into a non-human life form, to use replicated virus to deliver therapies, except is specifically approved for specific treatment by the Ethics Committee. So all of this is right in the bill, Madam Speaker, with a lot of their concerns, what they spoke to. And then it speaks about no person shall abort or attempt to abort a fetus for the purpose of conducting research. No person shall offer to do or advertise the doing of anything prohibited by subsection 1 and 2. No person or entity shall cause an approved therapy to be adulterated or misbranded, which they raise, cause the receipt of any therapy that is adulterated or misbranded, or falsely or fraudulently purport to have any approval from the Ethics Committee or the Board. And then the last subsection 5, no person or entity shall pay or offer to pay a consideration to a person for doing anything prohibited by the section. Madam Speaker, when I listened at the contribution for St. Anne's, and I was kind of embarrassed, really, because they've read this legislation, or they didn't read it, and they have tried to condemn this before it even got out the gate. And what concerns me is that they speak about how it will touch people. And the reality is that a lot of times we get up in here, this place, and we speak to legislation, and we really don't know how it will affect people. When we speak to regenerative therapies, Madam Speaker, I have a friend who has a 9-year-old son. When the child was born, he had issues walking and all of this stuff. So they tried to find out what was wrong with their son. At the age of 1, they traveled to Miami. They traveled to South Florida. They traveled to every doctor in the Bahamas that had any type of dealings with what they thought it might have been. He was diagnosed with a genetic condition at the age of 1. The parents spent every dollar they had to figure out this issue, right? Come to find out, it's a DNA issue. Every one of us, every human, has a gene, whether it's from their father or their mother, that provides intelligence, things that we take for granted, such as swallowing, walking, all that type of stuff. So by chance, this child had a gene from the mother and the father that happened to combine. All of us only have one, whether it's the intelligence of the father. That's why some people say you're smart like your ma, you're smart like your pa. So in theory, it really is like that. What? Yeah, some mess about all together. So they have tried since he was 1 to not only get him diagnosed, but to find a cure. There is no cure for this rare disease that this young boy has. None. Of late, there are some trial treatment to this disease. Now, what's interesting is we're debating a bill that speaks to DNA, and you know they've taken the angle of speaking about fetus and to try to muddy the waters. But they have come up with a way to deal with a DNA treatment whereby they removed 50 milliliters of blood, and they inject this special treatment directly into the red blood cell. Now, they don't know if this will alter the DNA in any way, or if this will just treat this genetic condition by way of DNA. But nevertheless, they're going to have to travel to either Baltimore, maybe Texas. And what this bill does is it helps to lay the framework to do things like that, to touch real people. Could you imagine if this bill is able to attract medicine therapy like that from across the world, where this one child could receive treatment or a cure to a disease that would otherwise send him to his grave by the time he's 30? Could you imagine? And we in here talking and politicizing this type of stuff. Something wrong. Yes. Something wrong. But I wanted to share that with you, Madam Speaker, because this today is much more important than the politics of it all. Because when people's lives are impacted like that. So, Madam Speaker, with that, Central and South Eleuthera supports this bill wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Asmini? Go. It's finished.
It's opposition.
Asmini has favor.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is I think it's a good piece of legislation. And as a medical personnel and one from the scientific community, I would have to support this because I would be in favor, as a medical person, I would be in favor of any type of research, studies, therapy that can prolong health, sustain health. People are continuously looking for the solution for aging and a solution for chronic pain. And in many instances, most of the solutions may be of genetic variation. But the only concern I would have at this particular point in time is my medical colleagues had one great concern in that the government had not consulted them with respect to this bill discussion and moving forward. But, Madam Speaker, I want to inform and remind the residents of Kalani constituency of our pre-independence family fun day, which is scheduled for the 6th of July, Saturday, 6th of July, at New Providence Community Center. And it's 5:30 until. It's a fun day, free food, games, etc. Bring the entire family. It's basically to reconnect and associate, communicate with each other, and be assured that it would be a very interesting time, an interesting day. Madam Speaker, I'm going to confine my debate more to health, because this is a health bill. And as I speak to my colleagues, there are concerns that they may have, not necessarily with the bill, but within the health community. And I'm certain that the member for Tall Pine would understand. But I rise today on behalf of the Kalani constituency to contribute to the Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill 2024. And legislation to the health sector is of particular interest to me, as I have dedicated my entire life to medicine and to the care of Bahamian people. And one of my greatest pleasures, Madam Speaker, as an obstetrician gynecologist, was successfully bringing new life into the world. And many of these children who have grown into adulthood are making their contribution to nation building. And dealing specifically with babies and mothers, women, that is the sector within the health community that made me who I am and what I am. And because babies and mothers have done so much for me, I have a predilection for, or particular liking for that group of individuals. And you'd find that I particularly, because of my bringing up and because of my medical career, I concentrate especially on the young people, babies, and particularly the female population. And yes, it's been said that during my career, I would have delivered about 5,000 babies. That was an underestimation, and that was intentionally done. That was intentionally done. That was intentionally done. Because knowing Bahamians, they would automatically start calculating in their heads as to how much each delivery costs, and subsequently how much money he may have made, and as a result may cause great problems at home and elsewhere. So that was an underestimation, but that would remain in the records, 5,000. That was acceptable, and that will remain. I am proud, Madam Speaker, that these hands helped to bring so many infants into this world. And being a physician is demanding and stressful at times. But seeing the joy of a parent's face when their child is born is a great joy for an obstetrician. Madam Speaker, many may ask, is politics stressful? And I've always answered and said, no, it is not as bad as medicine. And the member for Tall Pines will tell you, politics is a joke when it comes to stress. In the medical community, stress, this is what stress is. You complete a surgical procedure, and everything goes well. And then, 16 hours later, they call you, the nursing or the health personnel call you to inform you that the blood pressure is falling, the patient is deteriorating, but you knew everything went well. So you subsequently rush to hospital, and you stay near that bedside, be it an intensive care unit or whatever, next to that patient all day, because you are so concerned for their health, knowing that you've done everything well and their life is in your hand. Madam Speaker, you stay at that bedside doing everything and trying to refer to any book of any type of experiment to make sure everything is done. And you go 24, 36 hours with no sleep. Then you try to write your notes. And Madam Speaker, you cannot write a simple word because of the stress level that you're undergoing. You cannot write your name, you cannot sign. You try to get something to eat, and you pick up the fork, and you can't find your mouth. It's just, your hands are just tremoring, shaking because of stress. You can't pronounce a word because of the staccato effect, because of the stress. Madam Speaker, that is stress when you're dealing with life and death. Politics is not stress. It may be a tax. I mean, as for me, I've been called everything in the world except the child of God, so I'm only waiting for that one. But But that is stress. Medicine is a very stressful field when you're dealing with life and death. And when you're dealing with an infant that represents the future of the country, you holding the future in your hand, that is stress if anything happens to that infant. And the mother who has to care for that infant throughout, bringing them up, supporting them, you're concerned. That is stress. The bill before us, Madam Speaker, helps to establish the Bahamas as a world leader in the field of longevity and regenerative medicine. The hope is that through its passage, there will be significant health and economic benefits to the country. And the minister responsible, the board, and ethics committees set out in this legislation all have various types of oversight roles to ensure that responsible research, and that's important, responsible research and therapies are carried out under this bill. The bill outright bans any therapy or research that seeks to genetically modify a human embryo with the intent of that embryo becoming a living human. Test gene therapies on patients without informed consent. Purposely modify the germline of an adult human. Transplant an edited human embryo into a non-human life form. Or use a replicative virus to deliver, except if approved for a specific treatment by the Ethics Committee. And these rules are important. These rules are important. We must be known as a jurisdiction that has high ethical standards. It will also be important that the regulators under this bill deeply scrutinize individuals who come in and the types of therapies they seek to undertake, be they stem cell therapies or other longevity medicines. This bill, Madam Speaker, will replace the previous stem cell legislation. And just as we saw in the crypto industry with Sam Bankman-Fried, there are many hucksters in the medical world also. And we must be cognitive of these individuals and certain to adhere to our legislation. They sell desperate patients on so-called new therapies that supposedly cure just about everything. I would remember, Madam Speaker, a long time ago, when AIDS first was recognized here in the Bahamas. Now, we may have seen AIDS before. We diagnosed individuals who developed fever and subsequently passed away. We would have diagnosed it at that particular point in time, PUO, pyrexia, meaning temperature of unknown origin. And that may have been a presentation of AIDS, but we were not that advanced yet to understand what was the cause. But we knew that they subsequently passed away from illnesses that we did not understand. And I would always remember a friend of mine, a colleague, who, after AIDS was diagnosed and we understood it, she had developed AIDS. And I was so disturbed and felt so helpless as a medical personnel who study and deal in research, and I could not find a cure for this particular illness. It was so disturbing that I called every bush medical specialist I knew and asked them, have they seen this type of thing? But that's the type of desperation people go through because they want a solution. So you can imagine if me as a doctor seeing a colleague, a friend, going through that, and I became so desperate in trying to help that anything I would have done in terms of research or medical medicine to give to her to ensure that she gets better. And individuals will come, individuals who are ill will seek medical care. And they will do anything and spend their entire life savings to get well. Because we all want to live. We all talk about going to heaven, but you can only go to heaven if you die, but not one of you want to die. Nobody want to die. Now, my mother, God rest her soul, did not like politics. And if she was living today, I would not have been in politics. My mother is convinced, and I could not change her mind, she is convinced that politicians are dishonest. She's convinced that politicians lie. And she's convinced that hell was made and designed for politicians especially. I could not convince her. So she had a problem with her son going along the hell line. But no, but I am one of those, I have not entered the hell road. I'm on the heaven road. Amen. Amen. Madam Speaker, individuals sell desperate patients on so-called new therapies that supposedly cure just about everything. Or in the longevity and regenerative space, they claim to reverse aging. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has had to repeatedly issue warnings regarding bogus and expensive stem cell therapies. We do not see crooks in the Bahamas. The regulators must cast a watchful eye on those who come to operate under this legislation. We should welcome in real doctors and real scientists who believe in the scientific method and who care for the people they treat or study. We should reject illegitimate money-making schemes that prey on people who are sick and desperate. Having a slack regulatory regime would harm our international reputation. We do not need international headlines reporting on people being harmed by bogus treatment in the Bahamas. We do not need headlines of people losing their life savings on unproven treatment. I support this legislation, and I congratulate the minister in bringing forth this type of legislation. The key to this, Madam Speaker, will be ensuring that the right people with the right medical and scientific credentials are chosen to oversee the sector. Madam Speaker, as we debate this medical bill, it is necessary for me to again plead to the Prime Minister not to go forward with the Chinese-funded hospital he proposes to build in New Providence.
That's where we disagree.
I understand that. That's what debates are all about. That's what debates are all about. We could easily build 2 or 3 new wings at Princess Margaret Hospital for the $290 million he proposed to spend on this one Chinese-funded hospital. Madam Speaker, if you listen to the medical community, they would tell you that we are advancing to a health crisis. We have serious health issues. Those health issues, some were there from I was born, and they've gone government after government. But we now feel that they're progressing and becoming worse. Because of what's happening, some people receive delayed care. But we have to look and see what are the problems.
Madam Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Golden Gates.
I move that the House moves beyond the 1 o'clock hour.
Second. Thank you, honourable members. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House proceed beyond the 1 p.m. hour. As many are in favour will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House will now proceed beyond the 1 p.m. hour. Honourable member for Kalani, you may proceed.
If you want me to start again, then 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, I'll come back and start from 0. No. Oh, okay. No, Madam Speaker, as politicians, we tend to concentrate more on structures, buildings. We get a high when we construct a new building. That's what we did, the next thing we did. But we must move away from that. We need a paradigm shift. Let's concentrate on people. Let's concentrate on the staff. Improve communication. Improve the environment that they work in, the working environment. Improve consultation between them and us. And let's work towards a positive, healthy environment. Because if an individual is happy within that environment, be it healthcare or wherever, then the patients subsequently meet the most happiest individual, and the results are better. But if individuals are stressed within an unhealthy, toxic environment, that toxicity spills over to the patient. That toxicity spills over to the community. And we have to shift our focus not on buildings, because a happy staff will subsequently result in happy patients and better outcome. And let's look at why our staff is so unhappy and why the environment is toxic. We need to spend more within what we have, the institution, to ensure that we communicate with regularity with the staff so they can point out to us what are the challenges they face. And yes, we may not be able to correct all, but if they see us making the step and communicating with them with regularity, that we cannot or we did not do this particular one because of these issues, but we will try to advance it next time. That's all people are looking for, Madam Speaker. So the environment must be healthy, and they must have the materials, the equipments to work with. Because if they don't have the equipments to work with, that's what caused the problem with the overflow of beds. The minister understands this. If an individual needs a surgical procedure, they are placed in a bad situation. They are admitted. But if you have a hospital with 7 theaters, and because of shortage of staff or whatever, and the minister knows that the staff complement for theaters, for example, are short to compare with what we need. So as a result of that, if we have 7 theaters and only 3 are functioning, it meant that the beds are occupied by 10, 15 individuals who are waiting for surgery. But they cannot receive their surgery because only 3 theaters are working. So other patients that may need bed cannot be admitted. There's a bad situation. But the bad situation is because we have not met the complements of staffing or materials. And that's why it's so important, Madam Speaker, let us not just concentrate on building our name to say, oh, this Minnis building, or oh, this Davils building. No, let's concentrate more on staff. Staff are leaving the hospital. They're resigning. They're taking pre-retirement leave. They're taking 4 weeks vacation. They're taking unpaid leave. And you know why? Because they're not happy with the environment. They're not happy with the challenges they face. They're not happy. No, having a new hospital is not the issue. It's not the solution. Because you're taking the same toxicity into a new hospital. And the same problems. You build a new hospital, you still don't have the staff complement. It's the same problem. You don't have sufficient doctors. You don't have sufficient nurses. You don't have sufficient supplies. You have a beautiful structure, but it's non-functional. And that's why I say we need the paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift can only occur with communication. So let's look at the problems. What are the problems? And these are the issues we have to deal with. Let's deal with the problems first. Doctors are leaving hospital. They're retiring. They're taking extensive leave because they are stressed out with the communication, not having the equipment, not having proper environment, having issues with the institution, they're not having adequate medical supplies or whatever is necessary. They are leaving because of stress and they're concerned about their own mental outcome. So they're leaving because they want to maintain their quality of life and don't spill the stress or the toxicity that they would experience onto their family. So that's one of the problems. Then equipment and supplies. Let's concentrate on those. Let's concentrate on this so that you would have a happy staff, a happy patient, and a happy outcome. The shortages, let's concentrate on that. And the staffing, as I've said. Just to give an example, Madam Speaker, we have a beautiful edifice at Princess Margaret Hospital. Beautiful structure, critical care block. 7 beautiful theaters, state-of-the-art theaters. But for those theaters who build it is immaterial. That is not the issue, and that is our problem. We glorify ourselves because you build this or the next one build it. No, we must move away from this glorification and let's concentrate on our staff and the environment. Let's concentrate on the people. Move away from this glorification. So, Madam Speaker, the theaters, for the 7 theaters to function, you need 30 nursing personnel. There are only 12. So as a result, 4 are closed and only 3 are functioning. because that's all we have. We're short of anesthesiologists, so you cannot function. So those are the problems. So yes, you would go tomorrow and build, or say, Minnestone's only built 7 theater. I'm going to beat Minnes, I'm going to beat Ingram, so we're going to extend it to 10. But what do? You make things worse because you still, and the minister knows these are the realities. All I'm saying is, as we move forward, and these are not your problem. We had similar problem. No. We had some. I know you have problems with staff. I know you have problems. But all I'm saying is, let us concentrate. Then, Madam Speaker, as we correct the system, I would hope that the minister would aggressively move towards the electronic medical records, because that is a problem. So the solution, let us do staff audit so we know exactly where the shortages are. And you can't correct them overnight. You cannot. But let's try work on it. Let us improve the communication between ourselves, between the staff, and everyone else. Everybody has to be involved. We think, and studies have shown, that the existing PMH can serve, but we were for stage development. The new government is for a new institution. We don't agree with that. Let's look at needs assessment. Let's look at the country's needs assessment. Individuals come to various government ministries and ask for government support, for scholarship, for this or that, but that may not be the needs of the Bahamas at that time. If we do the needs assessment, we know what we need for our projections 10, 20 years from today, and assist those individuals, scholarships, etc. So, Madam Speaker, those are just some of the things that we need to look at. I'm talking about staffing people we have to concentrate on. I again ask the Prime Minister, how many Chinese workers will he bring to build this new hospital? No one, the government side, can give a clear answer to this question. I say clear. Will there be 1,000? Will there be 2,000? Or will it be more Chinese workers over the life of the project? With unemployment having risen, why are we going to give so many work permits and jobs to non-Bahamians? The Prime Minister recently bragged about personally intervening to stop work permits for foreigners for jobs that could be done by Bahamians. If he had to intervene, this is an admission that his government has been allowing foreigners to do jobs that could be done by Bahamians. But even worse, his government is going to allow big time and on a grand scale the very things he says he wants to stop. This is hypocrisy and double talk on a massive and grand scale. Hundreds, if not thousands, of work permits and jobs are going to go to Chinese for a number of years. These are jobs that could be done by Bahamians. As the bulk of the salaries for these workers will be paid in China, these tens of millions of dollars will never circulate in our economy. And this policy to allow so many foreign workers is the ultimate opposite of Bahamian first. This policy by the PLP, foreigners first and Bahamian last. The proposal by my government had to build a new wing at PMH would have overwhelmingly been done by Bahamian workers. We've spoken repeatedly on that. Madam Speaker, the Bahamian taxpayers are paying for this hospital. They deserve to know how many foreigners Prime Minister will let into the Bahamas to build this hospital. The country is getting outraged over the percentage of foreign workers. The head of the Contractors Association told the Tribune earlier this month, and I have the article, that he thinks, that's his view, that, and Professor, I adopt. That he thinks it could be as high as 90% of the workers at the hospital being foreign. Nearly every commentary I have read in the media is critical of this hospital. Dr. Conwell Brown told Tribune earlier this month that the phased redevelopment of PMH makes a lot more sense because necessary utilities and infrastructure are already in place. In an article entitled 650 Jobs to Fill at $290 million Hospital on June 14th, 2024, Dr. Brown said, "My vote, in a nutshell, is that we optimize and improve Princess Margaret Hospital. That $300 million they're talking about, my crystal ball tells me we will see cost overruns, underestimates, and a challenging cost structure." Dr. Brown also echoed concerns other doctors have raised about the lack of consultation. The story said, Dr. Brown, meanwhile, echoed concerns voiced by Dr. Gemma Roll, the MAB president, over the government's failure to widely consult doctors and other medical professionals over its plan and its advance. Madam Speaker, I obviously would not have time to go into what I wanted to say, and I'm certain that the minister and others are very happy about that. But before I close my debate during the last 30 seconds that I have, I would like to ask the minister with responsibility for national insurance. I know the government had announced that there would be a 1.5% increase in NIB contributions effective the 1st of July. Would the minister inform this House whether or not national insurance has made provisions within their computer system to accommodate this 1.5%? Because there are some individuals who want to pay, but they've been informed that the computer system has not yet been, there's been no beta testing, and the system is not in place yet, and therefore they cannot pay. This is a challenge if that's the case, because these are supposed to be effective the 1st of July, but the payment cannot be accommodated at this particular time. So I asked the minister to look into that. And there had been an internal audit report. I don't know if the minister would be so kind as to inform us as to the outcome of the internal audit report. And I think another report by the Price Waterhouse report. Would you table the Price Waterhouse report that was done? When would that be tabled so that we can review that? But most importantly, the internal audit report. I believe that there are some very vital information that would have been revealed in the internal audit report. And I think Parliament would love to see that report so that if there's any investigation that has to be done and individuals has to be dealt with, or any monies were misappropriated or so, I think the public needs to know all of that. Madam Speaker, time would not allow me to proceed, so I support this piece of legislation.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I didn't want to interrupt the member for Kalani, and I do thank him, and the medical community thank him to support such an important bill, Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Bill. I do agree with him that the regulatory framework is absolutely essential so that we protect the good name of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And I want to refer him to Section 25 that speaks about the regulatory framework, and to look very closely at the function of the board and the ethics committee. I know, but what I'm saying is we believe that we have a tight-knitted framework where we would hire the necessary personnel to move forward. And lastly, I do disagree with him with the hospital by the Chinese government, and the Bahamian people can rest assured that a lot of support will be given to local contractors. I do disagree with the 90-10% that the leader of the Contractors Association has said. And in due time, we would reveal the ratio of Chinese versus Bahamian workers. and we're excited to do so. As far as the hospital is concerned, yes, there was a proposal to expand around the Princess Margaret Hospital, but the hospital is deteriorating. The critical care block is gold standard, but when you move beyond the critical care block, we have major challenges with the infrastructure. These are legacy units, legacy issues, by the way, and it has superseded me, and it will keep going on. But we believe that what we're doing is correct, and it's okay to disagree. But I assure you that many of the things you talk about with consultation with our healthcare workers is paramount. We do it. I agree with you. We need to do a lot more. But I want the entire healthcare community to know that we are concerned about the conditions of the Princess Margaret Hospital. We're concerned about the tight spaces. We're concerned about the deterioration of the structure. We're concerned about the shortage of healthcare workers, by the way, which is global. It's not only the Bahamas. And we're doing a lot of new and exciting things to address many of the concerns you have outlined, Kalani. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I agree with the Minister. All I'm saying is that we need a paradigm shift and concentrate even more on the staff, their environment, etc. And the only thing with respect to New Hospital, we can debate back and forth about location, but I would ask the Minister to be very cognizant of flooding and drainage within that area. I would not like to see the problem that has occurred with the JL building on Blake Road, the building that the government owned. That building has a chronic problem of mold infestation. You cannot have a similar episode occurring at the hospital, mold infestation. Individuals will go into the hospital well and come out sick. The hospital will be the incubation for illness. So those are concerns I would have. Pardon?
The member for Kalani. The member Kalani and the Bahamian people can rest assured that the site that we're looking at that is going through the final stages of the environmental impact assessment will be a site that is conducive for further growth and development for healthcare services in the Bahamas. And this whole scenario about mold and flooding, you can rest assured that the mitigation efforts associated with this project will be one of the best. As a matter of fact, what we intend to do in the area is clean up the mess that currently exists, because we have found fecal matter in many of the well fields in close proximity to this land, and we intend to address those healthcare concerns while constructing a state-of-the-art hospital that will not only be able to mitigate floods, but be a place where people can rest assured in the heat of any hurricane. It can be a shelter. And I'm confident of that fact, and the research and all of the environmental impact assessments will confirm that once the Ministry of Environment has agreed that the site is conducive for construction. We will move to go back to the Bahamian people and answer a lot more of the questions that you brought forth today, Kalani.
Why I'm so persistent and passionate about staffing. We built 2 mini hospitals, Abaco and Exuma, state of the art. But they're not as functional as they should be. Why? We give a perfect building, but no staffing, no equipment, no material. So dental facilities there, for example, may have never been used because you don't have any dentists. You just do not want to fall in the same trap again. You build a hospital, you have no staff, and therefore it's non-functional. We have basically, you have examples after examples. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you so much. I beg to disagree with you. I could agree with you as far as Abaco and Exuma mini hospitals is concerned. There was no motivation in the past, but I want to assure you that we are moving to put those 2 facilities as urgent care facilities, and we are now in the final stages of procuring the necessary equipment and the manpower resources, both locally and internationally, to ensure that we have the capability to have these things functioning. So we're recruiting, Minister. We're recruiting. I've already recruited in Ghana. We're recruiting additional nurses from abroad, and we're recruiting physicians to ensure that individuals in the Family Island have access to the same quality of health care that the residents in New Providence and Grand Bahama have. So stay tuned. We're not just sitting, sleeping on our laurels. We realize we need help. We need help, and we have a short-term plan for help where we're going to recruit to fill some of these gaps that have been like that for a long time. We are recruiting, sir.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had by private notice indicated that I wanted the opportunity to make a brief ministerial statement with regard to the status of Hurricane Beryl, which is now in the southern Caribbean Sea. So with your permission, Hurricane Beryl is passing through the southern Caribbean Sea, having affected, it appears, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Barbados and Grenada. From the initial reports, I gather the Prime Minister has had a briefing of the situation in St. Vincent from the Prime Minister of St. Vincent. I've not had an opportunity to be of a debriefing from him. But Barbados appears to have come through with minimal issues, some flooding. And so as far as we're aware, our Honorary Consul Selvin Smith is indicating that all Bahamians, as far as we're aware, are safe in Barbados. I think as we speak, the hurricane is still passing through Grenada. When I last spoke to our officials there, unfortunately, the heads of government meeting was supposed to take place beginning tomorrow in Grenada. And the Foreign Affairs team had gone in advance of both the Prime Minister and myself yesterday. And as soon as they landed, the decision was taken to cancel the meeting, but there was no way to get them out. We tried by private charter. The airport is closed until Tuesday morning, they expect. So our Director General and 2 Foreign Service officers are in Grenada, and as far as we're aware, up to about an hour or so ago, they were all safe. A lot of high winds expected and a lot of rain. The next landfall that may take place is Jamaica, because on the track of the hurricane, it appears it may be headed toward Jamaica. Honorary Consul there, Alveda Knight, has been in touch with the students who are there in Jamaica and has urged them, as we've urged everybody, to take the advice of the local officials with regard to it. We may have to supply them with, there's a request from them for some equipment, I think flashlights or something when the power goes down. But everyone, insofar as we're in Jamaica, is safe, and we're taking the appropriate precautions with respect to being in touch with them. We'll watch events as they unfold, and if necessary, take whatever emergency measures are necessary to ensure that those students and Bahamians in Jamaica are safe. So I wanted to report that to the House. I promised the press that I would make some intervention with regard to it, and I hope that this information provides some level of comfort that we are on top of this issue. So I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honourable member for
the member for Tall Pines made a comment to the member for Killarney that they're not simply sitting back and resting on their laurels. But I can't let that go, Madam Speaker, because the laurels implies that they have achievements, from the high cost of living, the FTX scandal, the murder rates, Madam Speaker, the dilapidated bridge at Marine Key. This is not an administration that has laurels to rest on. They need to do something to actually achieve something, Madam Speaker, and to date, they have nothing to rest on. 9 million tourists spending $7 at most in a marina, in a harbor, and in a port facility built by the F&M, Madam Speaker. It's good that Fox Hill has finally returned to the country that elected him, Madam Speaker, but nobody's buying his jargon, Madam Speaker. He better just give weather reports from now on, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Golden Gaines.
Speaker, I move that the business of the House suspend until 3 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House suspends until 3 p.m. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m.
All right.